Hello guys, welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash won the Kalos League and Diantha, Korrina, and Serena became his royal harem. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Apex. The roar of the Lumiose Conference Stadium was not a sound, it was a physical weight. It pressed against the chest, a wall of 50,000 screaming throats that vibrated through the concrete floor and into the soles of Ash Ketchum's boots. But Ash couldn't hear them. The world had narrowed down to a singular tunnel of vision, tinted in edges of high-contrast blue and the searing orange of dragon fire. His breath hitched in his throat, not because his lungs needed air, but because Greninja's lungs were burning. He could feel the phantom heat searing his left side, a sympathetic echo of the blast burn that had just grazed his partner's ribcage. "Hold," Ash whispered. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. The connection between them was a taut steel wire, humming with electricity. Across the shattered arena, Alan stood amidst a rising column of steam. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, desperate, terrifying, and dangerously focused. His Mega Charizard X, a beast of black scales and blue hellfire, snarled. Blue flames licked at the corners of its maw, dripping onto the charred rock like liquid napalm. "It ends here, Ash." Alan's voice cracked, strained by the toll of the Mega Evolution. Charizard. Dragon Claw. The black dragon launched itself, the ground cratering beneath its takeoff. It was a blur of violence, claws extending into glowing green scythes capable of shearing through tank armor. "Now," Ash said. On the field, Greninja didn't just move, he vanished. The sound came a split second later, a sonic boom that rattled the glass of the VIP boxes. Greninja reappeared directly above the charging dragon, a shuriken of compressed water spinning on his back. The air around the ninja Pokémon warped, the water glowing not just blue, but a blinding, transcendent gold. Ash mirrored the motion, his arms sweeping down. He felt the water's weight in his own hand, the cold density of it. Aerial Ace. Use the momentum. Greninja dropped like a guillotine. He didn't strike the dragon, he struck the force of the dragon, kicking off the extended dragon claw to pivot in midair. It was a maneuver of impossible agility, turning Alan's brute strength against him. Charizard stumbled, momentum carrying it forward, exposing the unarmored scales of its back. "Water Shuriken," Ash commanded, his voice cold, absolute. Full release. The golden disc on Greninja's back expanded, doubling in size, screaming with rotational energy. Alan's eyes went wide. He realized, too late, that he had been baited. He had been fighting a duel, Ash was fighting a war. "Block it!" Alan screamed. "But you cannot block a tidal wave with a shield." Greninja slammed the shuriken down. The impact was silent for a heartbeat, a vacuum of pressure that sucked the air out of the stadium. Then, the explosion hit. A pillar of steam and golden light erupted, piercing the cloud cover above. The shockwave hit the barrier field, causing the hexagonal energy shields to flare and crackle. Ash didn't flinch. He stood with his cap pulled low, his eyes glowing with a faint, sympathetic blue light. He felt the impact in his own bones, the recoil, the triumph, the exhaustion. He felt Charizard's consciousness flicker and fade before the dust even settled. The smoke swirled, thick and gray, hiding the outcome from the masses. The announcer was screaming something unintelligible. The crowd held its collective breath. Ash exhaled, his shoulders slumping slightly as the bond phenomenon disengaged. The golden light faded from his eyes, leaving them a warm, tired brown. "Good job, partner," he murmured. The wind picked up, stripping the smoke away. Mega Charizard X had reverted to its base form. It lay sprawled on the scorched earth, unconscious. Greninja stood over it, panting heavily, one knee on the ground, but awake. Victorious. The silence broke. It started as a low rumble and erupted into a frenzy. The stadium shook. Ash looked up at the giant monitors. Winner, Ash Ketchum. He had done it. After Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, he had finally climbed the mountain. But as he looked across the field at Alan, who had fallen to his knees in despair, Ash didn't feel the rush of elation he expected. He felt a heavy, somber clarity. He walked across the ruined field, ignoring the medical drones hovering nearby. He stopped in front of Alan. "Stand up," Ash said, offering a hand. Alan looked up, his eyes wet, filled with the panic of a man who thought his failure meant the end of everything he loved. I needed this power. For Marin. You have power, Ash said, his voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. But you were fighting out of fear. Fear makes you hesitate. It makes you rigid. He grabbed Alan's wrist and pulled him to his feet. You didn't lose because you were weak. You lost because I trusted my partner to take the hit, and you were too afraid to let yours get hurt. Alan stared at him, stunned by the maturity in the younger trainer's voice. This wasn't the boy he had met in the woods. This was a veteran. Ash. The shout came from the sidelines. Clement, Bonnie, and Serena were running toward him. Serena was in the lead, her face flushed, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't hesitate. She hit him at full speed, burying her face in his shoulder. You did it, she sobbed into his jacket. You actually did it. Ash winced, his ribs were definitely bruised from the sympathetic damage, but he wrapped an arm around her, grounding himself. We did it, he corrected, looking at Pikachu, who had scrambled onto his other shoulder, nuzzling his cheek. Up in the royal box, the atmosphere was different. Diantha, the champion of Kalos and famed actress, watched the scene below not with the smile of a benevolent host, but with the sharp, analytical gaze of a general assessing a new weapon. She leaned forward, her white dress stark against the velvet railing. He's different, she murmured. Beside her, Professor Sycamore adjusted his glasses, checking the telemetry readings on his tablet. His bond phenomenon, the energy output spiked higher than the Mega Evolution readings. It's unprecedented. It's not just synchronization, Diantha. It's biological fusion. I don't mean the Pokemon, Diantha said softly. She watched how Ash handled Alan, how he calmed the crowd with a simple wave, how he held Serena without awkwardness, absorbing her emotion while maintaining his own composure. I mean him. The league has had champions before. Strong trainers. But Kalos doesn't need a strong trainer right now. It needs a king. The glass doors to the box slid open with a hiss. Korrina, the gym leader of Shalar City, strode in. She was still in her roller blades, dressed in her combat gear, looking restless. That fight was insane, Korrina said, unable to keep the grin off her face, though her eyes remained serious. I felt the aura flare from all the way in the tunnels. Lucario nearly evolved in its ball just from the resonance. She walked to the edge of the balcony, looking down at Ash. He hits harder than he looks. He thinks faster than he looks, Diantha corrected. She turned, her expression hardening. Prepare the ceremony. But keep security tight. My Gardevoir has been sensing a disturbance in the psychosphere all day. Something is wrong. The sun had begun to dip, casting long shadows across the stadium as the podium was raised. The energy of the crowd had shifted from frantic excitement to a respectful hush. Ash stood at the center of the platform. The trophy was large, gold, and gaudy, but he barely looked at it. His attention was on Diantha, who walked toward him holding a velvet cushion. On it lay not a medal, but a circlet of woven silver and crystal, the ancient crest of the Kalos League, a relic from the days when the League was a knightly order, not a sport. Diantha stopped before him. Up close, Ash saw the exhaustion in her eyes. The lines of stress that makeup couldn't hide. Ash Ketchum, she said, her voice amplified across the stadium. You have conquered the gym leaders. You have bested the rivals. You have proven your bond. She picked up the circlet. Do you accept the burden? Ash paused. The script said she was supposed to ask if he accepted the title. She had said burden. He met her eyes. They were violet, deep, and pleading. She wasn't acting. She was communicating. Are you ready for the real fight? Her eyes seemed to ask. Ash didn't blink. He gave a single, sharp nod. I am. Diantha placed the circlet on his head. The moment the silver touched his skin, the world screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a pulse of pure energy that erupted from the ground beneath the stadium. A shockwave of light, prism-colored, violent, and ancient, blasted upward from the prism tower in the distance, arcing across the city and striking the stadium. The ground buckled. Ash fell to one knee, clutching his head. Images flashed in his mind. A king 3,000 years tall. A flower that killed. A dragon that brought order. A woman singing a song of destruction. Ash. Serena's voice was a distant echo. The circlet on his head was burning cold. The spirit of Kalos, the latent infinity energy of the land itself, was reacting to him. It was recognizing a signature. A chaotic, powerful aura that matched the ancient wavelengths. What is this? Ash gasped, fighting to stay conscious. Diantha was on her knees beside him, shielding him from the wind that had whipped up out of nowhere. The succession, she hissed, her voice low so the microphones wouldn't catch it. The energy, it chose you. It's not supposed to happen like this. It hasn't happened in centuries. Boom. The second shockwave wasn't magical. It was an explosion. In the center of Lumio City, the prism tower turned red. Not the warm glow of the gym, but the angry, pulsing red of a warning light. Massive, thorny roots, thick as trains, glowing with corrupt red veins, burst from the pavement, shattering buildings, overturning cars, and tearing through the streets. The stadium screens flickered and changed. The image of the battlefield was replaced by the face of a man with a flared orange mane of hair and a cold, nihilistic smile. People of Kalos, Lyssandra's voice boomed, smooth and terrifyingly calm. For too long, we have lived in a world of stagnation. A world where the strong serve the weak. Today, that world ends. Panic. Instant, primal panic. The crowd surged toward the exits, screaming. But the roots were faster. They erupted around the perimeter of the stadium, smashing the gates, sealing the 50,000 people inside. They're trapping us, Korrina shouted, skating onto the podium, her Lucario already out and snarling. Diantha, the exits are blocked. The roots are reinforced with some kind of energy dampener. Lucario's aura sphere bounced right off. Diantha looked at the chaos, her composure cracking. She was a champion, yes, but she was a peacetime symbol. This was a siege. We need to evacuate the civilians. I'll call the Elite Four, we can, no. The voice cut through the panic like a blade. Ash stood up. The silver circlet was still on his head, crooked now. He wiped a streak of blood from his nose. His eyes were no longer brown. They were hard, dark flint. The shock was gone. The confusion was gone. He looked at the chaos, and he didn't see terror. He saw a battlefield map. The Elite Four are scattered, Ash said, his voice projecting with a command authority that stunned Korrina into silence. If those roots are dampening energy, they're trying to prevent a counterattack from the inside. They want us trapped while they take the tower. He turned to Diantha. You know the city's grid. Can we bypass the stadium's power to overload the door locks? Diantha blinked, caught off guard. Yes. But it would take time to reroute. You don't have time, Ash said. He pointed to the north side of the stadium, where the roots were thinnest. Korrina. Yeah. Korrina straightened, her hand resting on her keystone. Take your Lucario and every fighting type specialist you can find in the crowd. Don't try to break the roots. Target the ground beneath the roots. Destabilize their anchor. Collapse the tunnel to create an exit ramp. Korrina stared at him for a fraction of a second, then grinned, a sharp, feral thing. Understood. Disrupt the foundation. She spun on her heel. Halucha, my camp trainers. On me. We're making a door. Ash turned to Serena. She was trembling, clutching her chest, terrified by the scale of the destruction. Serena, Ash said, stepping into her space, forcing her to look at him. He placed his hands on her shoulders. Look at me. She looked up, her blue eyes wide. I need you to be the voice, he said firmly. The people are panicking. If they stampede, more people will die from the crush than the plants. Get to the announcer's booth. Use the PA system. Guide them to the north exit Korrina is making. Keep them calm. Tell them the champion is handling it. I can't. You can, Ash said. You controlled a stage of thousands. This is just an audience that needs direction. You are the only one who can do this. Serena took a ragged breath. She saw the absolute faith in his eyes. She swallowed her fear, nodding once. Okay. I'll guide them. She ran toward the tech booth, her movements shedding their hesitation. Ash turned back to Diantha. The champion was staring at him. What are your orders for me? She asked, her tone strangely devoid of irony. She wasn't mocking him. She was acknowledging the shift. In this moment, with the crown on his head and the fire in his eyes, he was the ranking officer. We're going to the tower, Ash said, unclipping a fresh pokeball. Lysandra is broadcasting from there. If we take him out, the roots stop. It's suicide, Diantha said. The city is overrun. We'll be swarmed before we get halfway. Not if we don't touch the ground, Ash said. He threw the ball. Charizard materialized with a roar that challenged the sirens wailing across the city. And not if we have the strongest psychic in the world covering our blind spots. Ash climbed onto Charizard's back. He extended a hand down to Diantha. Coming, champion. Diantha looked at the hand. She looked at the boy, no, the young man, who had just taken command of a catastrophe in less than 60 seconds. She felt a strange, terrifying thrill in her chest. For years, she had carried the weight of Kalos alone, acting the part of the invincible queen while crumbling inside. Now, someone else was holding the weight. She took his hand. He pulled her up behind him with surprising strength. Get us close, Diantha whispered, her arms wrapping around his waist, her Gardevoir materializing to float beside them. I'll clear the skies. Charizard, Ash commanded, his gaze fixed on the blood-red prism tower in the distance. Fly. As the dragon launched into the smoke-choked sky, leaving the chaos of the stadium behind, Ash felt the circlet tighten around his brow. He didn't know it yet, but the tournament was the easy part. The war for Kalos had just begun. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2, the weight of the crown. The sky above Lumios was a bruised purple, choked by the smoke of 100 fires. Ash leaned low against Charizard's neck, the heat of the dragon's scales seeping through his jacket. Below them, the city of light had become a grid of darkness and violence. The massive red roots that had erupted from the earth weren't just stationary barriers, they were pulsing, writhing like living arteries pumping poison into the soil. Bank left. Diantha's voice tore through the wind. Incoming, 3 o'clock. Ash didn't look, he just reacted. He yanked his body weight to the side, signaling Charizard. The dragon rolled, its massive wings catching the updraft. A beam of concentrated energy, dark and crackling with red static, sliced through the air where they had been a second before. What was that? Ash yelled over the roar of the wind. Mirror shot, Diantha called back, her hand extended, eyes glowing pink as she synchronized with the Gardevoir floating in the slipstream beside them. But corrupted. That wasn't a Pokémon. She was right. Through the smoke, a squadron of metallic shapes emerged. They looked like Magnemite, but stripped of their souls, sleek, jagged chrome casings with single, unblinking red eyes. They moved with the terrifying precision of a hive mind. Gardevoir, Psyshock. Diantha commanded. The psychic type unleashed a wave of physicalized mental energy. It slammed into the drones, crumpling the lead units like tin cans. But more were swarming from the alleys below. We can't fight the whole city in the air, Ash shouted. We need a secure location to coordinate. Where's the ops center? The League Administration building is compromised, Diantha said, scanning the burning skyline. We have to go to the old citadel. Underground. It's a Cold War bunker from the Azoth era. The roots shouldn't have penetrated that deep. Guide us, Ash said. Charizard, flamethrower. Clear a path. The dragon roared, unleashing a torrent of fire that incinerated a web of vines blocking their descent. They dove into the concrete canyon of the financial district, pulling up hard just meters above the pavement. Ash recalled Charizard mid-slide, the red beam absorbing the dragon just as his boots hit the ground. Diantha landed beside him with grace that belied the chaos. She pressed her hand against a nondescript brick wall in an alleyway. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a retinal scanner. Authorization, Grand Duchess, she whispered. The wall groaned and retreated, revealing a heavy blast door. As it hissed open, the smell of stale air and ozone rushed out to meet the acrid smoke of the city. Ash stepped inside, and the weight of the silence was heavier than the noise outside. The bunker was a hive of activity, but it was the frantic, terrified activity of a command structure that had been decapitated. Junior officers were shouting into dead phones. Maps on the central holodeck were flashing red. When Ash and Diantha walked onto the command deck, the room froze. 4 people stood around the central table. The Elite Four. Wickstrom, clad in his full plate armor, looked like a statue of grief. Drasna, usually smiling, was pale, clutching a rosary of dragon fangs. Seabold, the water-type master, was pacing furiously, while Malva leaned against a console, her expression unreadable behind her dark glasses. Diantha. Wickstrom fell to one knee, his armor clattering. Thank the stones. We thought the tower had fallen. It has, Diantha said, her voice sharp. She didn't stop walking until she reached the head of the table. Lysandra has the gym. He has the broadcast tower. And he has a weapon we don't understand. Seabold slammed his hand on the table. The police are useless. The grid is down. We are blind, Diantha. We need to surrender the outer districts and consolidate the League forces. No, Ash said. The word hung in the air. Seabold turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as they landed on Ash. Excuse me. This is a war room, boy. Not a post-match interview. Go sit in the corner until, I said no, Ash repeated. He walked up to the table, standing opposite Seabold. He didn't look intimidated. He looked at the map with the same intensity he used to dissect a gym leader's strategy. If you surrender the outer districts, you give him the power substations. Those routes are energy dampening. If he gets the substations, he can expand the dampening field to cover the whole region. You won't just be blind, you'll be defenseless. Seabold scoffed, crossing his arms. And I suppose a child from Kanto understands the infrastructure of Lumiose better than the High Architect? Diantha stepped forward. Seabold. Stand down. Diantha, be reasonable. He's a tourist. He is the king, Diantha said softly. The room went dead silent. Even the background hum of the server seemed to stop. Diantha pointed to the silver circlet still resting on Ash's messy hair. The succession law of AZ. The crown of Kalos activated. The spirit recognized him. Malva pushed off the wall, her sunglasses sliding down her nose. You're joking. The crown hasn't active since the Unification Wars. It's a museum piece. It's not a piece of jewelry, Malva, Diantha said, her eyes flashing. It's a biometric key. I saw it. The energy didn't just glow, it integrated. Technically, under the Wartime Acts of 1894, he is the Commander-in-Chief of the Kalos Defense Forces. Siebold looked at Ash, then at the crown, then back at Ash. He looked like he had swallowed a lemon. This is absurd. He's 17. He catches Pokemon. He doesn't lead armies. Ash ignored the title. He ignored the shock. He reached out and touched the holographic map. His fingers traced the red lines of the enemy advance. It doesn't matter what you call me, Ash said, his voice low and steady. It matters that I know how to win. Lysandra is fighting a territory control game. He's using fear to herd people into the center. He looked up, meeting Siebold's gaze. Why? Siebold blinked. To hold them hostage? No, Ash said. Too many people. It's a logistical nightmare. He's herding them to the center because he needs them out of the way of the underground tunnels. Ash pointed to the subway lines on the map. Look at the pattern of the routes. They aren't random. They're blocking intersections. He's clearing a path from the geothermal plant to the prism tower. Drasna gasped. The ley lines. He's trying to tap the geothermal core directly into the tower. Ash nodded. He's building a battery. If he connects the core to whatever is on top of that tower, he won't just control Kalos. He'll be able to rewrite the landscape. Ash looked around the table. We don't consolidate. We counterattack. Siebold, take your squad to the aqueducts. Flood the lower tunnels. Force his roots to fight the water pressure. Wickstrom, hold the bridges. Drasna, I need you to create an interference field to jam their drone signals. Siebold stared at the map. He traced the lines Ash had indicated. The logic was sound. It was aggressive, risky, and brilliant. Slowly, the water elite nodded. The water pressure in the aqueducts, if I use Gyarados to overpressurize the valves, I can rupture the ground beneath the roots. It would destabilize them. Exactly, Ash said. Siebold straightened his posture. He looked at Ash with a new, grudging respect. Very well. I will flood the tunnels. Malva, Ash said, turning to the fire elite. Malva stiffened. And what orders do you have for me, Your Majesty? Or should I say, for the traitor? The room tensed. Everyone knew Malva's past association with Team Flare. Ash walked around the table until he was standing right in front of her. He looked her in the eye. There was no judgment in his face, only calculation. You know them, Ash said. You know how they think. I don't need a fighter right now. I need a spy. I need you to find out who is pulling Lysandra's strings. Malva's eyebrows shot up. Lysandra is the leader, kid. No, Ash said. I saw his eyes on the screen. He's zealous, but he's desperate. Someone gave him that tech. The roots, the drones, that's not Team Flare's style. It's too synthetic. Malva stared at him for a long moment. Then, a slow, sharp smile curved her lips. You're more observant than you look. Fine. I have a back channel. I'll see what burns. Ash turned back to the map. Diantha. Yes. I need you here, Ash said. I need you to coordinate the Elite Four. You know their strengths better than I do. Be the general. Diantha felt a strange sensation in her chest. Relief. For years, she had been the face, the shield, the sword, and the mind. She was exhausted. Now, she had a commander. She could focus on execution. "And you?" she asked. Ash turned toward the blast door. He adjusted his gloves. "My friends are still out there. Korrina is holding the vanguard, and Serena is with the civilians. I'm going to the front." "Ash, you can't," Diantha said, stepping forward. "You're the high-value target. If Lysandra captures you, he can try," Ash said. He turned back, and for a second, the fluorescent lights of the bunker seemed to reflect off the silver circlet, making it look like a halo of white fire. "Pikachu, let's go." Pika. The electric mouse, who had been silently watching from the console, leaped onto Ash's shoulder, cheeks sparking. As the heavy doors hissed open, Diantha watched him leave. She touched the key stone at her throat. "Gods help us," she whispered. "He's actually going to win this." The surface was a nightmare. Lumio City, usually a jewel of architecture, was a war zone. The air was thick with ash. The screams of civilians had died down, replaced by the eerie mechanical hum of the drones patrolling the streets. Ash moved through the shadows of the North Boulevard, Pikachu mirroring his stealth. He wasn't running blindly. He was moving point to point, using the aura he had tapped into during the Greninja bond to sense life signatures. Left. 3 hostiles. Ash slid behind a burning car wreck as a patrol of Z-Series Houndoom trotted past. They were terrifying, their flesh woven with metallic fibers, their eyes glowing with the same red light as the roots. He waited for them to pass, then sprinted across the street toward the stadium entrance. The scene at the north gate was a stalemate of violence. Korrina was a whirlwind. She had abandoned her roller skates for stability on the broken rubble. Her Lucario, in its mega-evolved form, was a blur of steel and fur, holding back a massive, tank-like Zyagran. Macamp, dynamic punch. Halucha, cover the left flank. Korrina screamed, her voice hoarse. She was leading a ragtag group of tournament participants. They were tired, scared, and losing ground. The roots were pressing in, narrowing their escape corridor. Ash didn't announce his presence. He acted. "Pikachu, thunderbolt on the wet pavement. Now." Pikachu launched himself into the air, spinning. A massive arc of yellow lightning slammed into the water pooling from a broken fire hydrant. The electricity conducted instantly, surging through the metal legs of the Z-Series machines pressing the line. The machines seized, their circuits frying. "Korrina! Switch out!" Ash yelled, vaulting over a concrete barrier to land beside her. Korrina whipped her head around, sweat matting her blonde hair to her forehead. Her eyes widened. "Ash? You're supposed to be in a bunker." "Change of plans," Ash said, unclipping 2 balls. "Halucha, Noivern. Air support." His 2 flying types burst out, immediately diving onto the enemy drones. "What's the status?" Ash asked, his back pressing against hers as they circled, watching the perimeter. "Bad," Korrina gritted out. "We cleared the civilians, but these things, they don't stop. They don't feel pain. My Lucario broke that Agran's jaw and it kept biting. We're holding the line, but I'm running out of steam." Ash looked at her. She was bleeding from a cut on her cheek. Her knuckles were bruised. But her eyes were fierce. "You don't need to hold the line anymore," Ash said. "Seabold is flooding the tunnels below us. In 2 minutes, this ground is going to collapse. We need to retreat to the secondary perimeter." "Retreat?" Korrina bristled. "Shalar warriors don't retreat." Ash grabbed her wrist, stopping her from rushing forward. "It's not a retreat, Korrina. It's a trap. We pull back, they follow, the ground gives way, and the water takes them." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "Trust me." Korrina felt the heat of his hand on her wrist. She looked at his face, the soot, the determination, the strange silver crown that looked bizarrely natural on him. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a rhythm that had nothing to do with the battle. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, Commander. What's the signal?" "Now," Ash said. A low rumble shook the earth beneath them. The sound of rushing water echoed from the storm drains. "Everyone fall back." Korrina screamed, her voice carrying the authority of a gym leader. "Move! Move!" The trainers scrambled back just as the pavement cracked. A geyser of high-pressure water erupted from the street, shattering the asphalt. The Z-Series Pokémon that had been advancing were swallowed by the collapsing road, washed away into the dark torrent below. Ash pulled Korrina back onto the safety of the sidewalk. They watched as the enemy line was washed away in seconds. Korrina let out a breath she'd been holding for an hour. She looked at Ash, a grin breaking through the grime on her face. "Not bad, Ketchum. Not bad at all. You held them off for 2 hours," Ash said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That was the hard part." "Ash." The voice came from the refugee tent set up in the park behind the line. Serena was running toward them. She wasn't wearing her performance dress anymore, she was in practical traveling clothes, a headset around her neck, carrying a crate of medical supplies. She dropped the crate and practically tackled him. "You're alive," she whispered, her hands gripping his arms as if to verify he was solid. "I saw the explosion near the tower. I thought." "I'm okay," Ash said, his voice softening instantly. He looked at her. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her hands were steady. "How are the people?" "Scared," Serena said, stepping back but keeping a hand on his arm. "But safe. We got the children and elderly into the subway station before you flooded the lower tunnels." "Wait, that was you, wasn't it?" Ash nodded. "We had to cut off the enemy advance." "I knew it," Serena smiled weakly. "I told them. I got on the radio and told everyone, Ash is fighting for us. Just hold on." "They listened, Ash. They believe in you." Ash felt a heavy lump in his throat. He looked at Serena, the girl who used to panic over baking macarons, now managing the psychological state of thousands of refugees. "You saved them, Serena," Ash said seriously. "Battles are just noise if there's no one left to protect. You're the reason they're calm." Serena blushed, the color rising to her cheeks despite the situation. "I just did what you said. I was the voice." Suddenly, the massive holographic screens that lined the skyscrapers of Lumios flickered to life. The static cleared, revealing Lysandra again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Standing behind him, in the shadows, was a figure clad in a white lab coat that looked more like priestly vestments. He wore a mask that covered the lower half of his face, and his eyes were magnified by thick, glowing lenses. "Citizens of Kalos," Lysandra spoke, his voice booming across the ruined city. "You cling to your old ways. You cling to the belief that humans and Pokémon are partners." The figure in white stepped forward. His voice was synthesized, cold, and metallic. "Nature is flawed," the figure said. "Evolution is too slow. Chaos. Pain. Death. These are the byproducts of an imperfect biological system." Ash stiffened. "Who is that?" "My name is Lord Valerian," the figure continued. "And I have come to offer you a cure. Why rely on the chaotic will of a Charizard or a Lucario when we can build perfection? The Ascendancy does not ask for your loyalty. We demand your obsolescence." The screen shifted to show a video feed. It was a laboratory. Inside a massive glass tube floated a Pokémon. It looked like a Zygarde core, but it was wrong. It was pulsing with purple and black veins, wires drilled directly into its hexagonal flesh. The Zygarde system was designed to maintain balance, Valerian said. We have improved it. We have removed the morality. We have removed the hesitation. Behold the engine of your new world. The feed cut. Ash stood frozen. The sheer arrogance, the coldness of it, made his blood boil. Korrina clenched her fists. He's torturing it. He's torturing a legendary. He's not just torturing it, Ash said, his voice dropping to a growl that made Pikachu's ears flatten. He's trying to play God. Diantha's voice crackled over Ash's communicator. Ash. Did you see that? I saw it, Ash replied, lifting his wrist to his mouth. Malva's intel just came through, Diantha said, her voice sounding strained. Valerian isn't just a scientist. He was the head of the Devon Corporation's Infinity Project, before he was exiled. He believes biological Pokémon are a dead end. He wants to replace them all. Ash looked at Pikachu. He looked at Lucario. He looked at the bond that connected them, the messy, emotional, powerful love that fueled them. He's wrong, Ash said. Ash, get back to the bunker. We need to plan the assault. No, Ash said. The assault starts now. Korrina, can your Lucario track the energy signature from that broadcast? Korrina looked at her partner. Lucario closed its eyes, its aura appendages waving in the air. It growled low, pointing a paw toward the prism tower. He says it's coming from the spire, Korrina said. But it's guarded by those elite flying units. Ash turned to Serena. Serena, I need you to keep the people underground. Don't let them see what's about to happen. It's going to get ugly. Serena grabbed his hand. Where are you going? Ash looked at the prism tower, looming like a red spear in the heart of the city. I'm going to go have a word with the landlord, Ash said. He released Charizard again. The dragon roared, sensing his trainer's anger. Ash, wait. Korrina shouted. You can't fly in there alone. The anti-air grid. Ash climbed onto Charizard's back. He looked down at the two women, the warrior and the diplomat. I won't be alone, Ash said. He tapped the circlet on his head. Diantha, are you listening? I'm here, the champion's voice came back. Drop the barrier on the west sector. Divert all power to the subway grid to mask our approach. I'm going to punch a hole in their front door. Ash, that's insane. If you miss. I won't miss. Ash leaned forward. Charizard. Mega Evolve. He didn't need a keystone. He didn't need a bracelet. The bond he had forged, the residual energy of the spirit of Kalos, and the sheer force of will bridged the gap. Charizard roared, wrapped in a cocoon of blinding light, emerging as Mega Charizard Y, sleek, fast, and burning like a second sun. Ash took to the sky, a streak of fire against the gloom. Korrina watched him go, her heart pounding. She turned to Serena. He's crazy, Korrina said. Serena watched the trail of fire in the sky. She wiped a tear from her cheek and smiled, a fierce, proud smile. Yeah, she said. He is. That's why we're going to win. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3, Iron and Bone. The wind screaming past Ash's ears wasn't air, it was a physical wall of pressure. They were in freefall. Seconds ago, Mega Charizard Y had banked hard at 3,000 feet, dodging a salvo of anti-air plasma fire from the prism tower. Ash had given the order to drop. No parachutes. No gliders. Just trust. Hawlucha, engage. Ash barked into the roar of the descent. The wrestling Pokémon burst from its ball in mid-air, catching Ash by the back of his tactical vest. A split second later, Korrina's Hawlucha mirrored the move, grabbing her. The two fighting types flared their wings, turning a terminal velocity plunge into a steep, controlled glide. Below them, the streets surrounding the prism tower were a labyrinth of red thorns and shattered concrete. The Ascendancy ground forces, those mechanical Z-series monstrosities, were swarming like ants around a kicked hill. Landing zone, 12 o'clock. Ash shouted, pointing to the slanted roof of a shattered metro station. Hit it running. They hit the roof hard. Ash rolled instantly, dispersing the momentum, coming up on one knee with a pokeball already expanding in his hand. Korrina landed with a heavy metallic clang, her rollerblade sparking against the slate tiles as she skidded to a halt, using her momentum to spin into a defensive stance. Greninja, water shuriken. Cover fire. Greninja materialized from the shadows of Ash's own silhouette, flinging 3 compressed stars of water into the street below. They detonated on impact, blasting back a squad of Z-hounds that were clawing their way up the building. Lucario, Aura Sphere. Korrina screamed, thrusting her palm forward. Her Mega Lucario leaped over the edge of the roof, firing a sphere of blue energy point-blank into the face of a Zeridon. The explosion shook the building, sending dust cascading down on them. Don't stop. Ash ordered, sprinting for the fire escape. If we stop, they pin us. We have to keep moving. I can fight them. Korrina yelled back, her adrenaline spiking. She looked wild, her eyes wide with the thrill of combat and the rage of seeing her city defiled. Lucario is tearing through them. Lucario is wasting energy, Ash cut her off, sliding down the ladder and hitting the alley floor. He grabbed her arm as she landed beside him, pulling her into the cover of a dumpster just as a laser beam scorched the brick where her head had been. Ash looked at her, his face inches from hers. Dirt smeared his cheek, and the silver circlet was tight on his brow. Look at them, Korrina. They don't retreat. They don't fear. Every second you spend fighting a grunt is a second Valerian uses to fortify the tower. We punch through. We don't brawl. Korrina grit her teeth, but she nodded. Punch through. Got it. Lead the way, Your Majesty. Cut the sass, Ash said, a ghost of a smirk touching his lips before vanishing. Let's move. The run toward the prism tower was a gauntlet of iron and bone. Ash moved with a fluidity that Korrina hadn't seen before. In the tournament, he was a trainer standing in a box. Here, on the ground, he was a combatant. He moved in sync with Greninja and Pikachu, a 3-part organism of destruction. When a Z-Bisharp lunged from a shattered storefront, Ash didn't shout a command. He simply ducked. Greninja, reading the micro-movement, leaped over Ash's head, slamming a glowing cut attack into the Bisharp's neck joints. Pikachu finished it with an iron tail to the knee, shattering the hydraulic strut. They were efficient. Brutally so. Korrina, by contrast, was a storm. She and Lucario were louder, flashier. She skated along walls, delivering high-speed kicks that dented metal, while Lucario turned enemies into scrap with Bone Rush. But the fatigue was setting in. They reached the Rue Vernal, a wide avenue lined with burning luxury boutiques. The prism tower loomed ahead, its base wrapped in a thicket of the red roots. We need to cross the open ground. Ash yelled. Greninja, smoke screen. Greninja slammed a water pulse into the burning pavement, creating a thick cloud of steam. Go. They sprinted into the mist. Halfway across, the ground trembled. Seismic activity? Korrina asked, scanning the fog. No, Ash said, sliding to a halt. His eyes narrowed, glowing faintly blue as the aura warned him. Ambush. The mist swirled. A massive shape rose from the pavement ahead of them. It was a Zygarchomp. But it had been modified. Its scythe arms were replaced with rotating serrated blades, and its chest was pried open to reveal a glowing red reactor core. It roared, a sound of grinding metal and tortured biology. I got this. Korrina shouted. She didn't wait for Ash's signal. The frustration of the stealth approach boiled over. She wanted to hit something. Lucario. Close combat. Korrina, wait. It's charging a blast. Ash warned. But she was already moving. She launched herself off a piece of rubble, Lucario mirroring her. They came in low and fast, aiming for the legs. The Z-Garchomp didn't dodge. It vented superheated steam from its chest vents. The blast caught Korrina in midair. It wasn't fire, it was pure thermal pressure. It knocked her backward, slamming her into the stone facade of a fountain. Lucario took the brunt of it, shielding her, but the force sent the aura Pokémon skidding across the pavement, its fur singed. Lucario. Korrina gasped, trying to stand. Her leg screamed in protest, her ankle was twisted. The Z-Garchomp turned its dead, red eyes toward her. The blades on its arms spun up with a high-pitched whine. It raised a scythe to finish her. Korrina reached for her keystone, but she was too slow. She stared at the death coming down, time seemingly freezing. Then, a blur of blue and yellow slammed into the Garchomp. Ash didn't use a Pokémon. He used his shoulder. He hit the Garchomp's knee joint with the force of a freight train, amplified by the blue aura flaring around his body. It wasn't enough to knock the monster over, but it was enough to throw off its aim. The blade carved a deep gash into the fountain's stone rim, inches from Korrina's face. Move! Ash roared. Greninja materialized on the Garchomp's back, stabbing water kunai into the rotor mechanisms of the wings. Pikachu unleashed a thunderbolt directly into the open chest reactor. The machine beast shrieked, convulsing as its internal systems shorted. Ash didn't watch it die. He spun around, grabbing Korrina by the waist and hauling her up. He didn't ask if she was okay. He dragged her behind the cover of a overturned delivery truck just as the Garchomp exploded. Debris rained down like hail. Silence returned to the street, save for the crackle of fires. Korrina sat against the truck's tire, breathing hard. She looked at Ash. He was checking a cut on his arm, shrapnel from the explosion. You. Korrina started, her voice shaking. You tackled a Garchomp. Ash didn't look up. He ripped a strip of cloth from his sleeve and tied it around the cut. It was off balance. Leverage. Leverage? Korrina let out a hysterical, short laugh. Ash, you could have been cut in half. Why did you do that? Ash finally looked at her. His eyes were hard, but the anger wasn't directed at her. It was directed at the situation. He knelt in front of her, his hands hovering over her twisted ankle. Because you're my general, Ash said simply. And because I need you. He placed his hands on her ankle. A soft, warm blue light emanated from his palms. It wasn't the healing move Heal Pulse, he wasn't a Pokémon, but it was pure bioenergy, soothing the inflammation. Korrina flinched at the touch, then relaxed. The pain receded to a dull throb. She watched his face. He was focused, intense, and terrifyingly competent. The boy she had skated circles around in Shalar City was gone. This was a king tending to his knight. I messed up, she whispered. I got impatient. I wanted to prove. Prove what? Ash asked, glancing up. That I belong here, she admitted, looking away. Diantha is a genius. Serena is, well, Serena is perfect. I'm just the girl who hits things. Ash finished wrapping her ankle with a bandage from his belt pouch. He stood up and offered her a hand. You're not just the girl who hits things, Ash said, pulling her up. He didn't let go of her hand immediately. He held it, his grip firm. You're the spirit of Kalos, Korrina. You're the fire. Diantha plans, Serena speaks, but we fight. If I'm going to break down that door, I don't want a genius. I want the strongest fighter I know. He squeezed her hand. I want you. Korrina felt the heat rise to her face, and for once, it wasn't from exertion. She looked into his eyes and saw zero deception. He believed it. She squeezed his hand back, her grip crushing. "All right, Commander. No more mistakes. Let's go break some toys." They reached the plaza of the Prism Tower. It was silent. Too silent. The red roots here were massive, thick as ancient oaks, curling around the base of the tower like a cage. In the center of the plaza, blocking the main entrance, stood a single creature. It didn't look like a Pokémon. It was a bipedal nightmare of smooth, black carapace. It had no face, only a vertical slit where a mouth should be. Long, spindly arms dragged on the ground, ending in three-fingered claws. It gave off no heat. No sound. "What is that?" Korrina whispered. "My Pokédex isn't registering anything." "It's a null beast," Ash said, his voice grim. "Diantha warned me about these. Valerian's personal guard. They're genetically engineered to eat infinity energy." "Eat it?" "Watch." Ash pointed. "Pikachu, Thunderbolt." Test shot. Pikachu fired a bolt of electricity. The creature didn't move. It simply opened the vertical slit on its face. The electricity wasn't deflected, it was sucked in. The yellow energy vanished into the void of the creature's body. The creature shuddered, then grew slightly larger. "It absorbs elemental energy," Ash said. "Fire, water, electric, it just makes it stronger." "So we hit it with physical attacks," Korrina said, reaching for her Pokeball. "Macamp can, no," Ash stopped her. "It absorbs infinity energy. That means Pokemon moves. Even a punch relies on the energy inside the Pokemon." Korrina went pale. "Then how do we kill it?" Ash unclipped his utility belt. He handed Pikachu to Korrina. "Hold him," Ash said. "Ash?" Korrina stared at him. "What are you doing?" Ash stepped out from behind the cover. He cracked his knuckles. He wasn't holding a Pokeball. "If it eats Pokemon energy," Ash said, walking calmly toward the beast, "then we don't use Pokemon." The null beast sensed him. It turned its faceless head. It sensed the aura radiating from Ash, the high-potency energy of the Chosen One, and it shrieked. A sound like tearing metal. It charged. Ash didn't flinch. He dropped into a stance that looked like a mix of a martial artist and a sprinter. "Ash, no!" Korrina screamed. The beast swiped with a claw that could shear through steel. Ash sidestepped, the wind of the blow ruffling his hair. He was fast. Humanly fast, but enhanced by the adrenaline and the latent aura of the crown. He stepped inside the creature's guard. He didn't use a mega punch. He used a straight right cross, putting his entire hip rotation into the blow. His fist connected with the black carapace of the creature's midsection. Crack. It wasn't a magical explosion. It was the sound of physics. Ash's knuckles against chitin. The beast stumbled back, confused. It was designed to absorb energy beams, not kinetic impact from a 17-year-old boy. Ash didn't let up. He grabbed the creature's arm, using its own momentum to flip it over his hip. The beast slammed into the concrete. "Greninja! Now!" Ash shouted. "You said no moves." Korrina yelled. "Not a move." Ash roared, dodging a tail swipe. The weapon. Greninja materialized, but he wasn't glowing with water energy. He held two jagged shards of rebar he had ripped from the debris. He handed one to Ash. It was primal. It was brutal. Ash and Greninja, fighting back to back, not with mystical powers, but with steel bars and raw speed. They hammered at the creature's joints, aiming for the soft tissue between the armor plates. The null beast screeched, thrashing. It tried to drain them, but there was no energy attack to drain. Just cold, hard iron. Ash saw the opening. The slit on its face opened to screech. Greninja. Ash tossed the rebar into the air. Greninja caught it with his tongue, whipped his head forward, and drove the steel bar directly into the creature's open maw. The beast convulsed. It clawed at its face, stumbling backward, tripping over its own feet. It collapsed, twitching, then dissolved into a puddle of black sludge. Ash dropped to his knees, gasping for air. His knuckles were bloody. His jacket was torn. Korrina stood frozen, clutching Pikachu. She had seen gym battles. She had seen league championships. She had never seen violence like that. She walked over to him slowly. You beat it with a metal pipe." Ash wiped the blood from his hand on his jeans. He looked up, his eyes tired but burning with a scary intensity. "It's a tool, Korrina. Valerian thinks he can engineer godhood because he understands the math of Pokemon types. He forgot that before we were trainers, we were hunters." He stood up, wincing slightly. "We're clear. Let's get inside." The lobby of the Prism Tower was a wreck. The beautiful glass atrium was shattered. The reception desk was crushed. But the elevators were active. "The security grid is down," Ash noted, checking a panel on the wall. "He wants us to come up." "It's a trap," Korrina said, Lucario growling at her side. "Obviously," Ash said. He walked to the center of the room. A large monitor dominated the far wall. Suddenly, the screen flared to life. It wasn't Valerian. It was Clemont. But it wasn't the Clemont they knew. The gym leader of Lumiose was strapped into a chair in the center of a massive machine at the top of the tower. His glasses were gone. His eyes were rolled back in his head, glowing with a vacant, electric blue light. Cables were attached to his temples and his chest. "Ash." Clemont's voice came through the speakers, but it was distorted, layered with a digital buzz. "Ash, run." "Clemont." Ash stepped forward, his fists clenching. The camera zoomed out. Behind Clemont, the machine was pulsing. It was drawing energy from him. Valerian's voice cut in, smooth and synthesized. "Fascinating, isn't it? The infinite potential of the human mind when interfaced with the chaotic energy of the electric type. He isn't just a hostage, Mr. Ketchum. He is the CPU." Ash's aura flared, a visible wave of blue heat that cracked the floor tile beneath his boot. "Let him go," Ash growled. "Come and take him," Valerian replied. "But be warned. If you disconnect him abruptly, his brain will liquefy. You have to fight your way up. And you have to defeat him to save him." The screen went black. Ash stood there, the silence of the lobby heavy and suffocating. Korrina placed a hand on his shoulder. She expected him to rage. She expected him to scream. Instead, Ash took a deep breath. He adjusted the silver circlet on his head. When he turned to her, his face was a mask of cold, terrifying resolve. "Korrina," he said softly. "Yeah. We're going to climb this tower. Okay. And we're going to kill everyone who stands in our way." Korrina shivered. It wasn't fear of the enemy. It was the realization that the boy who loved Pokemon more than anything was ready to burn the world down for his friend. She drew her Lucario's Pokeball, the metal cold against her palm. She stepped up beside him, their shoulders touching. "Lead the way, my king," she said. Ash kicked the elevator doors open. They didn't wait for the car. They looked up the empty shaft, stretching endlessly into the dark, red-lit heights of the tower. Ash grabbed the cables. "Up," he commanded. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4, The Velvet Glove. The champagne in Diantha's glass was vintage, chilled to perfection, and cost more than the average Lumiose citizen earned in a year. She held it by the stem, her gloved fingers relaxed, her posture evoking a boredom she didn't feel. Around her, the ballroom of the Grand Hotel in Laver City was a swirl of silk, jewels, and nervous laughter. Outside, the sky was dark. 200 miles away, the capital was burning. But here, the music played on. It's a necessary purge, don't you think? The man speaking to her was Baron Molyneux, a tech magnate who had made his fortune mining evolution stones in the glittering caves of Kalos. He was sweating slightly, his eyes darting around the room. Diantha turned, the sequins of her midnight blue gown catching the light. She wasn't Diantha the champion tonight. She was Madame Liss, a reclusive investor from Sinno. She adjusted her domino mask, a piece of lace that hid the most recognizable eyes in the region. Necessary is a strong word, Baron, she purred, her voice lowered an octave, sultry and detached. Expensive is the word I prefer. Revolution eats into profit margins. Ah, but the returns. Molyneux leaned in, smelling of expensive cologne and fear. Lord Valerian has promised stability. No more erratic Pokémon destroying infrastructure. No more league regulations. A controlled ecosystem. Controlled by whom? Diantha asked, taking a sip. By the shareholders, of course, Molyneux whispered, winking. Diantha smiled. It was a perfect, dazzling smile. Underneath the table, her hand was clenched so tight her nails were digging into her palm. These people, the elite of Kalos, weren't hostages. They were backers. They were financing the destruction of their own culture because they thought they could buy shares in the New World Order. I'm intrigued, Diantha said. But I don't invest in promises. I invest in prototypes. Where is the assurance that Valerian can actually deliver? Molyneux checked his watch. The gala isn't just a party, madam. At midnight, the inner circle is viewing the feed. The Godkiller Project. It's going to change everything. Midnight, Diantha repeated. How exciting. She excused herself, slipping through the crowd. She needed to get to the server room. If there was a live feed, there was a source signal. And if there was a source signal, she could find out exactly what Valerian was building in that tower. As she moved toward the service corridors, she tapped the pearl earring in her left ear. Status, she whispered. Status is critical. We are taking heavy fire. Ash didn't whisper. He grunted the words as he swung from a severed elevator cable, swinging across the open shaft of the prism tower. 50 floors up. The elevator shaft was a vertical coffin. Emergency red light strobed, illuminating the smoke that poured from the vents. The air smelled of ozone and burnt rubber. Jump! Ash yelled. Korrina leaped from the maintenance ladder, catching Ash's outstretched hand. He groaned as her weight hit him, his arm socket screaming, but he didn't let go. He swung them both toward the opposite wall, where a service hatch had been blown open. They crashed onto the metal grating of the 51st floor landing. Korrina rolled, coming up with her Lucario instantly shielding her. We're clear. No contacts. Ash pulled himself up. He was a mess. His knuckles were raw, his jacket was shredded, and he was covered in grease and soot. But the silver circlet remained fixed on his head, shining eerily in the red emergency light. We have to keep moving, Ash wheezed, checking his belt. We have 20 floors to the observation deck. Ash, stop. Korrina grabbed his shoulder. Look at you. You're shaking. I'm fine. You're running on fumes, she snapped. You used so much aura fighting that null beast, you're pale as a ghost. If we run into another one of those things, you're going to collapse. Ash pulled away, walking to the edge of the platform to look up the shaft. Clement is plugged into a machine that is eating his brain, Korrina. I don't have time to be tired. And if you die before we get there, who saves him? Korrina countered, her voice echoing in the shaft. We take 5 minutes. Drink some water. Let Lucario check the perimeter. Ash stared at her, his chest heaving. He wanted to argue. He wanted to push. But he saw the look in her eyes, not fear, but command. She was right. He was useless if he passed out. He slid down the wall, sitting heavily on the grating. 5 minutes. Korrina sat beside him, handing him a canteen. You're an idiot, you know that. Ash managed a weak smirk. I've been told. Why did you take the crown? Korrina asked quietly, watching the red lights flicker. You could have walked away. You won the league. You could have gone back to Kanto. Ash took a long drink of water. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. I didn't take it, Ash said. It just happened. He looked at the ceiling, toward the distant top of the tower. But now that I have it, I feel it. It's not like a trophy. It feels like the whole region is plugged into my nervous system. I can feel the panic, Korrina. It's loud. He closed his eyes. They're scared. They think they've been abandoned. Deep beneath the streets, in the command bunker, the panic was palpable. The main ops room was chaos. The holographic map of Kalos was a sea of red warning icons. The communication lines were flooded. Mayor's office is demanding an evac timeline. Riots in the southern boulevard. They're looting the pokemarts. The press is calling it the end of times. Serena stood in a corner, watching. She felt small. She wasn't a trainer like Ash. She wasn't a general like Diantha. She was just Serena. We need to cut the feed, Siebold was shouting at a technician. The news is causing mass hysteria. Shut down the broadcast towers. You can't, Serena said. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the noise. Siebold turned, his face flushed with stress. This is a military operation, girl. Go help with the rations. Serena stepped forward. She didn't look angry. She looked calm. A terrifyingly unnatural calm that she had learned from watching Ash stare down legendaries. If you cut the feed, silence will kill them, Serena said, walking to the central console. Silence breeds fear. Fear breeds panic. Panic breeds chaos. You want to stop the riots. Don't silence them. Talk to them. Siebold scoffed. And say what? Please remain calm while we lose the war. No, Serena said. She reached for the headset on the desk. Tell them the king is fighting. She looked at the technician. Can you patch me into the emergency alert system? Audio only. Region-wide. The tech looked at Siebold. Siebold looked at Serena. He saw the set of her jaw. The steel in her spine. He remembered that this girl had stood on a stage in front of millions and improvised a victory when everything went wrong. Do it, Siebold grunted. Serena put the headset on. She closed her eyes for a second. She thought of Ash. Not the Ash on the posters, but the Ash who had held her hand when she was scared. The Ash who ran toward the fire. Show them what I see, she thought. Citizens of Kalos, Serena began. Her voice wasn't the high-pitched, energetic tone of a performer. It was lower, warmer. It sounded like a friend sitting next to you in the dark. The room went quiet. I know you are afraid, she said. I know the sky is dark. I know the ground is shaking. You look at the prism tower and you see a monster. In the elevator shaft, Ash's head snapped up. The voice was coming through the maintenance speakers. But you are looking at the wrong thing. In the ballroom in Laver City, the music stopped. The guests looked at the speakers. Diantha paused in the hallway, pressing her ear to the door. Right now, in the heart of that darkness, there is a light. You know him. You watched him fight for you in the arena today. You saw him fall, and you saw him stand up. Serena opened her eyes, staring at the map of the burning city. Ash Ketchum didn't leave. The champion didn't flee. He is climbing that tower right now. He is climbing it for every person huddled in a subway station, for every child clutching their partner, for every family waiting for the sun to rise. Ash listened. The pain in his arms seemed to dull. The exhaustion in his legs faded, replaced by a warmth that spread from his chest outward. They want you to believe that we are obsolete, Serena continued, her voice gaining strength, echoing across the entire region. They want you to believe that our bond with Pokemon is a weakness. But they are wrong. Our bond is not fragile. It is iron. It is the thing that will break their machines. She leaned into the mic, so do not be afraid. Hold your partners close. Light your fires. Stand your ground. Because the king is coming for them. And he does not know how to lose. Silence. Then, a sound came through the return feed in the bunker. It wasn't static. It was cheering. From the subway tunnels. From the shelters. A roar of defiance rising from the underground. Serena took the headset off, her hands trembling. Siebold stared at her. He adjusted his cravat, looking humbled. Well, he muttered. That was effective. In the elevator shaft, Korrina looked at Ash. He was standing up. The fatigue was gone from his face. He looked focused, centered, and dangerous. She's good, Korrina said, a small smile on her lips. Yeah, Ash said softly. She is. He walked to the service hatch. He punched the metal lock, shattering it. Let's go. I'm not making a liar out of her. Diantha moved fast. Serena's speech had distracted the guards. The investors were murmuring, confused by the unauthorized broadcast. It was the perfect cover. She slipped into the server room, her Gardevoir materializing silently behind her to incapacitate the lone technician with a hypnosis wave. Quickly, Diantha commanded, plugging a decryption drive into the main console. Find the file Molyneux mentioned. Godkiller. The screens flashed. Data scrolled by at impossible speeds. Gardevoir's eyes glowed blue as she psychically processed the information, guiding Diantha's search. Found it, Gardevoir's voice echoed in Diantha's mind. A video file opened. It was archival footage. Grainy. It showed a lab, not the sleek Team Flare labs, but something older. Dustier. A man in a lab coat stood over a table. On the table lay a fossil. No, not a fossil. A corpse. It was a gene sect. But it was organic. Before the armor. Subject 01 proved unstable, the man's voice, Valerian's voice, but younger, narrated. The biological component rejects the artificial command drive. But we have found a workaround. We don't need the body. We just need the code. The video cut to a new scene. The Zygarde core. We are rewriting the DNA of the Order Pokemon, Valerian explained. We are splicing it with the aggressive genetic markers of Mutuo and the energy absorption properties of the Deoxys matrix. We are not creating a Pokemon. We are creating a Titan. Diantha felt a chill crawl up her spine. He's not just enhancing it, she whispered. He's trying to merge the three most dangerous genetic anomalies in history into a single vessel. Suddenly, the screen turned red. Access denied. Security Protocol Omega. They found us, Diantha hissed. Gardevoir, teleport. Get this data to Ash. No. The voice came from the shadows behind her. Diantha spun around. Malva stood in the doorway. But she wasn't wearing her Elite Four attire. She was wearing the red suit of Team Flare. And she was holding a heavy blaster pistol aimed at Diantha's chest. Malva, Diantha said, her voice even. I thought you were smart. You're betting on the losing horse. I'm betting on the horse that pays, Malva said, though her hand wavered slightly. Give me the drive, Diantha. Valerian knows you're here. If you walk out, he kills everyone in this hotel. Including the staff. Diantha looked at the drive. She looked at Malva. He's going to kill them anyway, Malva. That's what purge means. Malva stepped forward. Don't preach to me. Just hand it over. Diantha sighed. She looked disappointed. I'm an actress, Malva. Do you know what the most important rule of the stage is? Malva blinked. What? Always have an understudy. Crash. The window behind Diantha shattered inward. A shadow ball the size of a beach ball flew into the room, slamming into the wall between Malva and Diantha. In the confusion, a Jengar materialized from the shadows of the room, not Diantha's, but a wild, chaotic element. And riding the Jengar was a young girl with a side ponytail and a mischievous grin. Bonnie? Malva shrieked. Order of the king. Bonnie yelled, tossing a smoke bomb. Diden, nuzzle. The tiny electric mouse leaped from Bonnie's satchel, landing on Malva's face and discharging a paralyzing shock. Malva screamed, dropping the gun. Diantha didn't hesitate. She grabbed Bonnie and the drive. Gardevoir, get us out. Space warped. The room dissolved into light. They reappeared on the roof of the hotel, the cold night air biting at their skin. Bonnie? Diantha stared at the child. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the bunker. Bonnie recalled her lone Jengar, clearly borrowed from a trainer in the shelter. She looked fierce. Serena said Ash needs help. I'm not staying underground while my brother is in trouble. She pointed to the sky. A sleek, corporate helicopter, commandeered by the resistance, was hovering silently above them. Get in. Bonnie shouted over the rotor wash. We have a delivery to make. Diantha looked at the girl, then laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. Ash's influence was infectious. He was turning the entire region into an army of lunatics. To the Prism Tower, Diantha ordered, climbing into the chopper. Ash and Korrina stood before the blast doors of the observation deck. They were battered. Ash's left eye was swollen shut from a skirmish with a security drone on floor 70. Korrina was limping heavily. But they were there. This is it, Ash said. The penthouse. You ready? Korrina asked, checking her Lucario. No, Ash said honestly. But let's do it anyway. He didn't knock. He placed his hands on the doors. His aura flared, blue and violent. He forced the hydraulic seals to pop, and with a scream of tearing metal, he pushed the doors open. They stepped inside. The room was vast, dominated by the machine in the center. Clement hung suspended in the light, silent. But standing between them and Clement was a man. He was tall, wearing a pristine white coat. He wore a mask that covered his mouth, and his eyes were magnified by lenses that whirred as they focused. Lord Valerian. He didn't have a pokeball. He held a cane that glowed with a pulsating purple light. You are persistent, Valerian said, his voice synthesized and bored. And your little girlfriend's speech was quite moving. The king is coming. How poetic. Ash stepped forward. Get out of the way. Valerian chuckled. He tapped his cane on the floor. The floor tiles shifted. 4 containment pods rose from the ground. They hissed open. Inside were 4 Pokémon. But they were gray. Lifeless. Their eyes were red LEDs. A Z Charizard. A Z Blastoise. A Z Venusaur. And a Z Pikachu. I analyzed your battle data from the League, Valerian said. I built these specifically to counter your team's psychological profiles. They know your moves before you make them. He pointed the cane at Ash. Show me, King Ash. Show me how your bond holds up against mathematical perfection. Ash didn't blink. He reached for his belt. Korrina, Ash said calmly. Yeah. Take the big ones. Korrina grinned, cracking her knuckles. With pleasure. Pikachu, Ash said, looking at his partner. The electric mouse sparked, its cheeks burning with intensity. Let's show him that math doesn't account for guts. Ash threw his cap backward. Let's go. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5, The Glass Fortress. The air in the observation deck smelled of ozone and sterile plastic. It was the smell of a hospital operating room, magnified 1,000 times and mixed with the copper tang of blood. Kill them, Valerian said. It was a casual command, like ordering tea. The Z-Series clones moved instantly. They didn't roar. They didn't posture. The Z-Charizard simply vanished in a burst of speed that defied its bulk, reappearing in front of Korrina with a thunder punch already primed. Lucario, cross-chop. Korrina screamed, her reaction time honed by 1,000 spars. Mega Lucario caught the fist, but the impact drove its feet into the steel floor, carving deep grooves. The Z-Charizard didn't recoil. It pivoted, its tail whipping around like a steel cable, slamming into Lucario's ribs. Ash. Korrina gritted out, backing up as the Z-Blastoise and Z-Venusaur flanked her. These things are heavy. They don't fight like Pokémon, they fight like machines. Keep them off me. Ash yelled, sprinting forward. He didn't run toward Valerian. He ran toward the Z-Pikachu. The mechanical clone mirrored him. It was faster, mathematically perfect acceleration. It intercepted Ash, unleashing a thunderbolt that was pure white, devoid of the yellow warmth of natural electricity. Iron Tail, ground it. Ash's Pikachu spun, his tail glowing metallic silver. He slammed it into the floor, creating a lightning rod that drew the white arc away from Ash. The concrete shattered, sending debris flying. Ash didn't stop. He vaulted over the explosion, using the smoke as cover to close the distance to the central machine. He could see Clement suspended in the light, his chest heaving arrhythmically. Clement! Ash shouted. Valerian watched from a floating platform above the chaos, checking his nails. He can't hear you, Mr. Ketchum. His auditory cortex has been overridden by the central processor. Currently, he is processing terabytes of combat data to optimize my soldiers. Ash reached the base of the machine. He reached out to grab the containment glass. Bzzzt. A force field threw him backward. He skidded across the floor, his jacket smoking. Inefficient, Valerian noted. You attacked the barrier without analyzing the frequency. Typical human impatience. Ash scrambled up, ignoring the burns on his hands. He looked at Pikachu. We need to overload it. Thunderbolt, full power on the emitter. Pika. Wait, Valerian interrupted. He pressed a button on his cane. I think a more personal deterrent is required. The machine humming behind Clement changed pitch. The cables attached to Clement's temples pulsed violently. Clement's head snapped up. His eyes, glowing that terrible electric blue, locked onto Ash. Clement. Ash froze. Clement's hand moved. He reached for his belt, which Valerian had left on him, and unclipped a Lux ball. Lux Ray, Clement said. His voice was flat. Robotic. Destroy target, Ash Ketchum. The electric type burst from the ball. But Lux Ray looked wrong. Its fur was matted, its eyes dilated. A neural collar was clamped around its neck, blinking in sync with Clement's headset. Clement, don't. Ash pleaded. It's me. Target locked, Clement droned. Electric terrain. Lux Ray roared, and the floor of the observation deck erupted in yellow sparks. The electric field boosted power, but it also paralyzed the nerves. Ash felt his muscles seize. "Wild charge," Clement ordered. Lux Ray launched itself at Ash. "Pikachu, intercept. But don't hurt him," Ash yelled. Pikachu tackled Lux Ray in mid-air, the two electric types tumbling across the room. But Lux Ray was fighting with suicidal abandon, biting and clawing without regard for its own safety. Pikachu was hesitating, trying to subdue a friend. "You see?" Valerian's voice echoed from the speakers. "Emotion is a glitch. Your Pikachu holds back. My Lux Ray does not. Therefore, my Lux Ray wins." Across the room, Korrina was fighting for her life. Mega Lucario was a whirlwind of motion, juggling the 3 Z-starters. Korrina was right in the thick of it, using her rollerblades to weave between the heavy attacks, directing Lucario like a conductor. "Bone Rush, sweep the leg. Now Aura Sphere the Blastoise in the cannon." Lucario obeyed, tripping the Z-Charizard and blasting the water cannon of the Blastoise. But the Z-Venusaur caught Korrina with a vine whip, slamming her into a pillar. "Korrina!" Ash turned, distracted. "Eyes front!" Clement shouted, "No, not Clement. The machine." Clement extended a robotic arm from his backpack, the Apom arm. It shot out, grabbing Ash by the throat and lifting him off the ground. Ash gagged, clawing at the metal claw. He stared into his best friend's face. Clement's expression was blank, tears streaming silently from his unblinking eyes. "Ash." The word was a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the machine. "Run." Then the machine overrode him. Clement's face spasmed into a snarl. "Discharge." Electricity surged through the arm. Ash screamed. It felt like his nerves were being stripped like wire. The silver circlet on his head grew hot, searing his skin. "End it," Valerian boredly commanded. Suddenly, the glass ceiling shattered. It wasn't a tactical breach. It was a demolition. A hyper beam tore through the skylight, vaporizing the glass and melting the steel beams. A massive shape dropped through the hole, creating a shockwave that knocked everyone, Ash, Clement, and the Z-clones, off their feet. Dragonite. And sliding off its back was Diantha, looking every bit the furious queen, and a screaming Bonnie. "Get away from my brother!" Bonnie shrieked. "Diden, enter the circuit." The tiny mouse Pokémon didn't attack. It scrambled out of Bonnie's bag and scurried up the machine, diving into the open access panel Valerian had used to showcase his art. "What?" Valerian stiffened. "No. That port is unshielded." "Nuzzle!" Bonnie commanded. Diden rubbed its cheeks against the main motherboard. It wasn't a strong attack. It was a short circuit. The machine sparked. The blue light in Clement's eyes flickered. The Apom arm released Ash, dropping him to the floor. Diantha stepped forward, her Gardevoir flaring its psychic power to create a barrier between the kids and the Z-clones. "You have made a grave mistake, Valerian," Diantha said, her voice ice-cold. "You assumed we were playing by league rules." She raised her hand. "Ash. Now. Sever the connection." Ash was on his knees, smoke rising from his clothes. He looked up at Clement, who was convulsing as the machine tried to reassert control. Ash saw the thick bundle of cables connecting Clement's spine to the mainframe. "Greninja!" Ash roared, his voice cracking. He didn't need to give a move command. The bond flared. Greninja, currently trading blows with the Z-Pikachu, disengaged instantly. He formed a water shuriken, but he didn't throw it. He held it like a dagger. Ash scrambled up the machine, ignoring the electricity arcing off the metal. He grabbed Clement's shoulders. "Come back to us, Clement." Ash pulled. Greninja slashed. The water shuriken severed the cables with a wet snap. The machine screamed, a digital death knell. The feedback loop exploded outward. Ash shielded Clement with his own body as the console detonated. They were thrown clear, landing in a heap near the elevator doors. Clement. Bonnie ran over, falling to her knees. Clement groaned. The blue light was gone from his eyes. He blinked, adjusting his glasses which were hanging crookedly off his face. Ash? Bonnie? Why does my head hurt? Ash let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. You're okay. You're back. On the platform, Valerian was furious. He slammed his cane down. Insolent pests. You destroy years of calibration. He looked at the Z-clones, who were twitching, their connection to the central processor severed. Useless. All of you. He pressed a sequence of buttons on his wrist gauntlet. If I cannot control the tower, Valerian sneered, backing toward a hidden escape chute, then I will turn it into a tomb. Self-destruct sequence initiated, a computerized voice announced. T-minus 60 seconds. He's rigged the core. Clement gasped, struggling to sit up. The prism tower runs on a geothermal tap. If it blows, it'll take half of Lumios with it. Can you stop it? Ash asked, hauling Clement up. Clement looked at the shattered console. No. The hardware is fried. We have to manually dampen the core. But that's in the basement. We're on the roof, Korrina pointed out, recalling her exhausted Lucario. We fly, Ash said. He looked at the gaping hole in the ceiling. Dragonite can't carry everyone, Diantha said, analyzing the weight. And Charizard is spent. Ash looked at the Z-clones. They were deactivated, standing like statues. We don't need to carry everyone, Ash said. He looked at the Z-Charizard. It was a machine. A tool. Clement, Ash said. Can you hijack that thing? Clement looked at the Z-Charizard. He tapped his glasses, his genius brain kicking into overdrive despite the trauma. The local control is severed, but if I use the APOM arm to bridge the circuit, yes. I can pilot it. Do it, Ash ordered. Diantha, take Bonnie and Korrina on Dragonite. Get to a safe distance. Clement and I will take the Z-Charizard to the basement and stabilize the core. Ash, no. Serena's voice came over the comms, frantic. That's suicide. You have less than a minute. I'm the king, remember? Ash said into his wrist communicator, offering a grim smile that nobody saw. Kings clean up the mess. Go. He shoved Clement toward the frozen Z-Charizard. Clement jammed his mechanical arm into the clone's access port. Override accepted. Neural link established. The Z-Charizard's eyes flared green. It lowered its neck. Ash jumped on. Clement scrambled behind him. See you on the ground, Ash saluted Diantha. Ash Ketchum, Diantha said, her eyes shimmering. If you die, I will kill you myself. Deal. Dragonite took off, carrying the girls into the night sky. Ash and Clement dove the Z-Charizard into the elevator shaft. Gravity assist. Clement yelled. We're falling faster than it can fly. They plummeted 50 floors in 10 seconds. The wind tore at their clothes. The countdown in the building's PA system ticked down. 10. 9. Pull up. Ash screamed. Clement yanked the neural interface. The Z-Charizard's wings snapped open. The G-force nearly blacked them out as they leveled off in the lobby, crashing through the floor into the sub-basement. 5. 4. They skidded into the geothermal chamber. The core was pulsing violently red. Greninja. Water shuriken. Cool it down. Z-Charizard. Vent coolant. Greninja unleashed a torrent of water. The Z Charizard ripped the coolant pipes from the wall, spraying liquid nitrogen onto the core. 3. 2. Steam exploded, filling the room. The red light pulsed once, twice, and turned steady orange. Sequence aborted. Ash collapsed against the Z Charizard's leg, sliding to the floor. That was too close. Clement wiped grease from his forehead. Statistically, that was impossible. Suddenly, the ground shook. Not a vibration. A heave. Aftershock? Ash asked. Clement looked at the sensors. No. The self-destruct didn't go off, but the energy surge, it had to go somewhere. Where did it go, Clement? Clement turned pale. It backwashed into the ley lines. It traveled upstream. To where? To the jagged mountains, Clement whispered. To the Zygarde cells. High in the mountains of Terminus Cave, deep within the earth, something stirred. It felt the surge of corrupted energy. It felt the attempt to synthesize its biology. It felt the imbalance. The 50% for me of Zygarde opened its eyes. But they weren't green. The corruption from Valerian's machine had traveled through the earth, infecting the Guardian. Zygarde rose, its serpentine body glowing with a sickly, violet light. It didn't screech. It broadcast a signal that every Pokémon in Kalos felt in their marrow. Order has failed. Purge initiated. Back in the basement, Ash clutched his chest. The silver circlet felt like it was freezing his skull. Ash? Clement asked. Ash looked up, his eyes wide with horror. We didn't stop it, Ash whispered. We just woke up the landlord. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6, The Mega Evolution Schism. The scream wasn't audible. It was a psychic frequency that vibrated in the teeth and rattled the bones. In the sub-basement of the Prism Tower, Ash fell to one knee, clutching his chest. The silver circlet on his head was burning, not with heat, but with cold, biting frost. Ash. Clement scrambled over the debris of the Z Charizard. What is it? A heart attack? No, Ash gasped, his eyes wide and unfocused. It's silence. He looked at Pikachu. The mouse Pokémon was shivering, ears flattened against its skull, whining softly. It wasn't fear of an enemy, it was the terror of suddenly being cut off from something vital. We need to get to the surface, Ash ordered, forcing himself to stand. Now. The rendezvous point was a rooftop garden on the outskirts of Lumiose, away from the fires. Dragonite touched down heavily, its breathing labored. Diantha and Korrina slid off, their faces pale. Ash and Clement arrived minutes later on a commandeered hover skid, a piece of Ascendancy tech Clement had hot-wired. You're alive, Serena breathed, running to Ash. She checked him for injuries with frantic hands, touching his face, his arms. The broadcast said the tower imploded. We stopped the blast, Ash said, catching her hands to steady her. But something else happened. He turned to the others. Korrina. Diantha. Check your stones. Korrina frowned. She reached for the key stone embedded in her glove. She froze. The stone, usually a vibrant, swirling mix of rainbow colors, was dead. It looked like a piece of gray slate. Lucario. Korrina shouted, releasing her partner. The aura Pokémon materialized, but it stumbled. It clutched its head, growling in confusion. It tried to summon its aura sphere, but the energy fizzled into static. What's happening? Korrina panicked, tapping the stone frantically. Why isn't it resonating? Diantha checked her necklace. Her key stone was also gray. The frequency, she realized, her eyes narrowing. That surge from the tower. It wasn't just an overload. It was a jamming signal. Clement pulled out a handheld scanner. She's right. The background radiation of Kalos has shifted. There's a new waveform overlaying the infinity energy spectrum. It's blocking the transmission between key stones and mega stones. He turned off mega evolution, Korrina whispered, horror dawning on her. He just disarmed the entire region. Not everyone, Ash said quietly. He looked at Greninja, who was standing on the parapet, watching the horizon. The frog Pokémon looked back. Their eyes met, and for a second, Ash's irises flashed red while Greninja's flashed ash brown. The bond hummed. Clear. Unbroken. Biology, Diantha noted, watching them. Your bond isn't based on a mineral frequency. It's genetic. Emotional. It can't be jammed. We need to fix this, Korrina said, her voice rising. Without mega evolution, we lose the heavy hitters. My Lucario, he feels hollow. We can't fight Valerian's titans like this. The Tower of Mastery, Ash said. Everyone looked at him. The guru told me once, Ash continued, the memory surfacing from his travels. The stones are just amplifiers. The power doesn't come from the rock. It comes from the history. If the signal is jammed, we need to go to the source to reset it. Grandfather, Korrina said. If anyone knows how to override a frequency jam, it's him. But Shalar City is on the coast. That's where the Ascendancy landed their reinforcements. Then we go to Shalar, Ash decided. We retake the tower. We turn the lights back on. The journey to Shalar was a blur of stealth and speed. They couldn't fly high, the skies were patrolled by hunter-killer drones. They skimmed the treetops on Dragonite and Charizard, who could still fly, though he couldn't mega-evolve, moving under the radar. When the coastline came into view, the silence in the group broke. Shalar City was burning. The beautiful seaside town was besieged. Amphibious Z-Swampert units were storming the beaches, their massive, mechanical arms smashing through the sea walls. The sky was choked with smoke. But the Tower of Mastery still stood. It was an island fortress, connected to the mainland by a thin strip of land. A golden barrier shimmered around it, an ancient aura shield generated by the disciples inside. They're holding, Korrina said, hope flaring in her chest. Grandfather has the shield up. Not for long, Ash pointed out. He pointed to the water. Emerging from the waves was a massive submarine dreadnought, flying the banner of the Ascendancy. Its deck guns were charging, not plasma, but sonic cannons designed to shatter crystal structures. They're going to crack the tower like an egg, Clement said. Drop us on the causeway, Ash ordered. Korrina, you and I break through the line and get to the guru. Diantha, Serena, Clement, keep that sub busy. Busy? Clement squeaked. With what? Improvise, Ash said, pulling his cap down. Charizard, dive. They hit the sand of the causeway running. The narrow strip of land was a kill box. Ascendancy troops, human mercenaries in exosuits, were pushing toward the tower's gate. Lucario, bone rush. Korrina screamed. Lucario materialized, swinging its bone staff. It struck a mercenary, knocking him back, but the blow lacked its usual explosive power. Lucario hesitated, expecting the surge of mega evolution that never came. A second mercenary leveled a concussion rifle. Look out! Ash didn't use a Pokémon. He shoulder-checked Korrina out of the way, taking the concussion blast on his aura-reinforced forearm. He grunted, sliding back, then lunged forward. He moved like a feral thing. He swept the mercenary's leg, grabbed the rifle barrel, and drove his elbow into the man's helmet visor. The glass cracked. The man went down. Don't stop. Ash yelled at Korrina. Keep moving. I can't. Korrina shouted back, deflecting a laser blast with her gauntlets. Lucario is weak. He's at half power. Ash grabbed her by the collar of her combat suit and dragged her behind a jagged rock. He's not weak. Ash roared over the noise of the battle. He's confused. He's waiting for the stone to do the work. You have to tell him he doesn't need it. Korrina looked at Lucario. The Pokémon was panting, looking at its paws with uncertainty. I don't know how, Korrina admitted, her voice trembling. We've always used the stone. It's our style. It's the shallow way. Ash stared at her. The dreadnought in the bay fired a warning shot that shook the island. Fine, Ash said cold. Then I'll show you. He turned to the line of enemies blocking the gate. Greninja. Greninja landed beside him. No transformation, Ash said. Just us. They moved as one. Ash sprinted left, Greninja sprinted right. They confused the mercenaries' targeting systems. Ash threw a smoke pellet, Greninja cut through the smoke with aerial ace. They didn't use power, they used rhythm. They used trust. They cleared the path to the heavy oak doors of the tower. Open it. Ash yelled to the disciples on the wall. The doors creaked open just enough for them to slip through. Inside the courtyard, the air was thick with the smell of incense and burning wood. Gherkin, the Mega Evolution Guru, stood at the entrance to the inner sanctum. He looked older than Korrina remembered. His beard was singed, and he was leaning heavily on his staff. His Lucario stood beside him, battered but defiant. Grandfather. Korrina ran to him. Korrina, Gherkin smiled sadly. And the chosen one. You are late. The stones, Korrina gasped. They're not working. I know, Gherkin said. He tapped the floor with his staff. Valerian has inverted the resonance. He has locked the door to the soul. How do we unlock it? Ash asked, stepping forward. We can't fight the war without full power. You don't unlock it, Gherkin said. He looked at Ash. You smashed the lock. Boom. The heavy doors behind them splintered. A massive figure stepped through the debris. It wasn't a Z Pokémon. It was a human. He wore a suit of powered armor that looked like a grotesque mockery of a Tyranitar. Hydraulic pistons hissed as he moved. He carried a hammer the size of a motorcycle. Commander Brutus, Gherkin identified him. Valerian's executioner. Brutus laughed, his voice amplified by the suit. Surrender the scroll of succession, old man. The ascendancy requires the location of the first stone. Never, Gherkin said, raising his staff. Korrina, Ash said, his voice low. Go with your grandfather. Get the scroll. I'll handle the tin can. You can't fight him alone. Korrina cried. Go. Ash shoved her toward the inner sanctum. Brutus charged. Ash rolled forward, under the swing of the hammer. Pikachu, iron tail on the knee joint. Pikachu slammed into the armor. It dented, but didn't break. Brutus backhanded Pikachu, sending the mouse flying into a stone pillar. Pikachu. Ash was exposed. Brutus raised the hammer for a killing blow. Suddenly, a blur of motion intercepted the hammer. It was Korrina. She hadn't left. She had caught the handle of the hammer with her bare hands. Her rollerblade sparked as she struggled against the hydraulic strength of the suit. I'm not leaving you, she gritted out, her muscles screaming. Then fight. Ash yelled. But stop fighting like a trainer. Fight like a warrior. He jumped onto Brutus's arm, using it as a runway to kick the faceplate. Lucario. Korrina screamed. Forget the stone. Feel my anger. Feel my drive. She let go of the hammer and dropped into a low sweep. Lucario mirrored her perfectly. There was no flash of light. No transformation sequence. Just a sudden, violent synchronization of movement. Korrina punched the armor's chest plate. Lucario punched the exact same spot with a force palm. The impact was devastating. The armor buckled. Again. Ash commanded, landing beside them. Greninja, Water Shuriken. Lucario, Aura Sphere. The three of them, Ash, Korrina, and their Pokémon, unleashed a barrage of attacks. They were weaving in and out of each other's spaces, a seamless dance of violence. Brutus roared, his suit sparking. Enough. He activated the suit's overdrive. A shockwave of energy blasted them back. Ash hit the wall hard. He saw Brutus aim a shoulder-mounted rocket at Korrina, who was dazed on the ground. No. But before Ash could move, a shadow stepped in front of Korrina. Gherkin. The old master didn't use a Pokémon. He simply stood there, channeling his own aura into a barrier. The rocket hit. The explosion tore through the courtyard. The barrier held for a second, then shattered. Grandfather. Korrina screamed. When the smoke cleared, Brutus was reloading. But Gherkin was lying on the stones, his chest still. Ash felt a cold rage snap into place. He walked toward Brutus. The silver circlet flared. His eyes turned blue. Greninja stood up, the water veil forming around him without a command. You shouldn't have done that, Ash said. The air pressure dropped. Greninja, Ash whispered. Kill him. Greninja vanished. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Ash Greninja moved faster than the suit's sensors could track. He sliced the hydraulic lines. He shattered the visor. He ripped the weapon mounts off the shoulders. Ash walked up to the crippled suit. He placed his hand on the chest plate. An aura sphere formed in his palm, small, dense, and unstable. Get out of my city, Ash said. He blasted the pilot through the courtyard wall and into the sea. Silence returned to the tower. Korrina was cradling Gherkin's head. The old man was breathing shallowly. Korrina, he wheezed. I'm here, grandfather. Hang on, we have potions. No, Gherkin whispered. He reached into his robe and pulled out a scroll case made of bone. The first stone is not a rock. It is a promise. He pressed the scroll into her hand. The stones are broken, because our faith was in the object, not the bond. You saw it, didn't you? With the boy. Korrina looked at Ash, who was standing guard at the gate, his back to them, giving them privacy. I saw it, she said, tears falling on his face. He is, the bridge, Gherkin rasped. You are the successor. You are the master now. Follow him, lead the new way. His hand went limp. Korrina didn't scream. She didn't wail. She bowed her head, pressing her forehead against her grandfather's. She stayed like that for a long time. When she stood up, her eyes were dry. They were hard. She walked over to Ash. She looked at the scroll in her hand, then tucked it into her belt. He's gone, she said. Ash turned. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He looked at her with the respect of a soldier. He died defending the line. Korrina looked at her keystone. She ripped the glove off her hand and threw it onto the stones. I don't need it, she said. She looked at Lucario. We don't need it. Lucario nodded, its eyes burning with a new resolve. It didn't need the mega form to be dangerous. It needed Korrina's will. Korrina dropped to one knee in front of Ash. It wasn't a gesture of submission. It was a knight swearing fealty to a king. Ash Ketchum, she said, her voice steady. The Tower of Mastery is yours. My Lucario is yours. My life is yours. She looked up at him. Command me. Ash reached down and took her hand, pulling her up. He didn't let go. I don't want a servant, Korrina, Ash said intensely. I want a partner. We're going to rewrite the rules. We're going to show Valerian that he can break our stones, but he can't break us. He looked out at the ocean, where the Ascendancy fleet was retreating, spooked by the display of power. Pack the scroll, Ash said. We're going to the jagged mountains. If Valerian wants a god, we're going to bring him a devil. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7, The Star and the Shadow. The world was turning gray. It wasn't a trick of the light or the smoke from the burning cities. It was a draining of color. As the group moved inland from the coast, riding low over the treetops on Dragonite and Charizard, Ash watched the forests below wither in real time. The vibrant green of the Kalos wilderness was fading into a sickly, brittle ash white. It's the Death Wing, Diantha murmured, her arms wrapped around Ash's waist as they rode Charizard. Her voice was tight, barely audible over the wind. Yveltal has awakened. Ash didn't answer. He couldn't. The silver circlet on his head was throbbing with a dull, nauseating ache. He could feel the land dying. It felt like a slow asphyxiation. They landed in a clearing near the foothills of the central mountain range. The grass crunched under their boots like dry bones. There were no bird Pokémon singing. No rustling in the bushes. Just a terrifying, hollow silence. We make camp here, Ash ordered, sliding off Charizard. He patted the dragon's neck. Charizard looked tired, his tail flame flickering lower than usual. The atmospheric dampening was affecting everyone. Clement set up a perimeter sensor, but his hands were shaking. The ambient energy readings are plummeting, Ash. It's not just life force. The air itself is losing thermal coherence. If this continues, the temperature will drop to freezing within 48 hours. Korrina dropped a heavy pack on the ground. She was still wearing her combat gear, her face set in a grim mask since the death of her grandfather. So we freeze. What's the plan? We can't punch a cloud. We find the counterweight, Ash said, unrolling a map on a flat rock. The legends say that when destruction rises, life awakens to balance it. We need Xerneas. Xerneas is a myth, Diantha said, walking over to the map. She looked regal even in her torn evening gown and stolen flight jacket, but her eyes were haunted. I've been champion for years. I've scoured every archive. Xerneas hasn't been seen since the Great War. It's a ghost story we tell children to make them feel safe. It's not a story, Serena said. They turned to her. Serena was standing at the edge of the clearing, staring into the dense, gray fog that blanketed the forest ahead. She wasn't looking with her eyes, she was feeling the air with her hands. I can hear it, Serena whispered. It's faint. Like a heartbeat under floorboards. Ash walked over to her. He trusted Serena's intuition more than Clement's sensors. Where? Deep, Serena said, pointing east. Toward the Geomancy Grove. But. She hesitated. It's afraid. It doesn't want to be found. Before they could formulate a plan, the air shimmered. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of their camp. It was projected from a high-altitude drone that had been tracking them silently. Lord Valerian appeared. He looked different. The white lab coat was gone, replaced by a suit of dark, liquid armor that seemed to pulse. Behind him, on the feed, was a sight that made Diantha gasp. The cocoon of destruction, Yveltal, was suspended in a containment field. But it wasn't sleeping. Massive tubes were drilled into the stone casing, pumping a red, viscous energy out of the legendary Pokémon and into a series of batteries. Beautiful, isn't it? Valerian's synthesized voice rasped. Entropy. The only true constant in the universe. You're killing the region, Ash said, stepping into the projection's light. You're sucking the life out of the soil just to power your toys. I am harvesting raw material, Valerian corrected. Yveltal is a generator. Nothing more. But I admit, the output is aggressive. The ecosystem is collapsing faster than my models predicted. Valerian leaned in, his masked face filling the projection. I offer a trade, Ash Ketchum. Surrender. Bring me the crown of Kalos, and allow me to vivisect the anomaly of your bond phenomenon. If you do this, I will turn off the siphon. The region lives. And if I don't? Ash asked, his hands balling into fists. Then I will let the drain continue until Kalos is a barren rock. And I will build my new world on the ashes. The transmission cut. The silence that followed was heavy. Diantha walked away from the group, heading toward the edge of the cliff overlooking the dead valley. Diantha. Ash called. Leave me alone for a moment, she said, her voice sharp. Ash watched her go. He looked at Korrina and Serena. Get ready to move. We leave in 10 minutes. He followed Diantha. She was standing on the precipice, the wind whipping her hair. She looked small against the backdrop of the dying world. We have to accept, Diantha said without turning around. Ash stopped a few feet behind her. No. Ash, be realistic. She spun around, her violet eyes blazing with tears. He's killing everyone. The farmers in Coumarine, the children in Santalon, they're dying right now because we are stubborn. If my life, if your life, can buy them time, we have to pay it. That is the job. That was your job, Ash said calmly. When you were the champion. I am still the champion. No, Ash stepped closer. You're not. You're a general in my army. And I don't trade lives. This isn't a Pokemon battle. Diantha shouted, stepping into his space, poking him in the chest. You can't just try harder and win. This is calculus. It's numbers. One life for millions. Why can't you see that? Because that's exactly what he wants, Ash said. He caught her hand, stopping her from poking him. He held it firmly. Valerian thinks everything is math. He thinks if he subtracts the weak, he gets perfection. If we surrender, we validate his equation. We tell him that life is a currency. Diantha trembled. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held fast. I'm tired, Ash. I've been holding this region together for so long. I'm just, so tired. I know, Ash said softly. He pulled her in. It wasn't rough, but it was decisive. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her flush against him. The height difference forced her to look up. You don't have to be the shield anymore, Ash whispered. Let me take the hit. Diantha looked at him. She saw the teenage boy she had met at the tournament, but she also saw the king who had broken a god's jaw with a steel bar. The attraction wasn't just physical, it was a relief. A sudden, overwhelming surrender of control. You're a fool, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm the king of fools, Ash smirked. Diantha closed the distance. She kissed him. It was desperate. It tasted of salt and ash. It was the kiss of a woman who had forgotten how to want things for herself. Ash responded with equal intensity, his hand tangling in her hair, grounding her. For a moment, the gray world faded. There was just heat. When they broke apart, Diantha rested her forehead against his chest, breathing heavily. If we die, she murmured into his jacket, I'm going to be very annoyed with you. If we die, Ash said, kissing the top of her head, you can scold me for eternity. Now, let's go find a deer. The forest was a labyrinth of mist. Serena took the lead. She didn't use a compass or a map. She walked with her eyes half closed, one hand extended, her fingers brushing the bark of the dead trees. It's getting colder, Clement shivered, hugging his backpack. My thermal sensors are reading near zero. We're close, Serena said. The silence is louder here. They entered a grove where the trees were petrified. They had turned to stone centuries ago, frozen in twisted shapes of agony. This was the site of the ancient weapon's first firing. "Hold," Ash signaled. Shadows moved in the mist. A pair of Trevenant emerged. But they were massive, ancient things, their bark scarred by wars long forgotten. Their eyes glowed with a hostile red light. They weren't corrupted by Valerian, they were enraged by the intrusion. "They're the Guardians," Korrina whispered, hand on her pokeball. "They think we're here to hurt the forest." "Don't attack," Ash ordered. He walked forward, his hands open and empty. "We aren't here to fight." Ash shouted. The Trevenant roared, a sound like cracking timber. Vines shot out of the ground, whipping toward Ash. "Ash!" Serena screamed. Ash didn't flinch. He didn't dodge. He flared his aura. A pulse of blue light erupted from his body, forming a dome. The vines hit the aura and shattered. Ash glared at the ghost types. He didn't look like a threat, he looked like a force of nature. "I said," Ash growled, his voice vibrating with the authority of the crown, "we are not here to fight. We are here to save your master." The Trevenant paused. They sensed the energy. It was the energy of the land. The energy of the king. Slowly, the vines retreated. The guardians parted, revealing a path through the densest part of the fog. Ash lowered his hands, the blue light fading. He looked back at his team. "Let's go." The center of the grove was not dead. It was a small circle of perfect, impossible green. In the center stood a massive tree, its bark shimmering with rainbow colors. "It's in tree mode," Clement whispered, awestruck. "Existing in a state of suspended animation to conserve energy." Ash walked up to the tree. He could feel the power radiating off it. It was warm, kind, and overwhelming. "Xerneas," Ash said. The tree pulsed. Light gathered. The bark shifted, flowed, and reformed. The branches became antlers. The roots became legs. Xerneas stood before them. It was beautiful. It towered over them, its antlers glowing with every color of the spectrum. Its eyes were deep pools of gold. It did not speak, but a voice echoed in their minds. It sounded like wine through leaves. "Why do you wake the sleeper?" "The balance is broken," Ash said, stepping forward. "Yveltal has been chained. The land is dying." "Death is a part of life," Xerneas replied. "Forests burn so they may grow again. Humans build, humans destroy. It is the cycle. I do not intervene in the tantrums of your species." "This isn't a cycle," Ash argued. "This is a purge. There is a man trying to erase you. He wants to replace the natural world with machines." Xerneas looked down at Ash. Its gaze was heavy. "And you? You wear the crown of the first king. The king who built the ultimate weapon. Why should I trust his successor?" "Because I'm not him," Ash said. "Prove it." The world dissolved. Ash found himself standing in a void. He was alone. No Serena, no Diantha, no Pikachu. In front of him stood Xerneas. "The first king sought to end war by ending life," Xerneas said. "He chose peace through silence. What do you choose?" "I choose the fight," Ash said instantly. "Fighting breeds pain. Fighting breeds growth," Ash countered. "You think peace is silence? That's death. Real peace is messy. It's loud. It's people arguing and making up. It's Pokemon battling to get stronger, not to kill." Ash stepped toward the god. "Valerian wants a world without pain. A perfect world. That's a grave. I'm fighting for the world where we get hurt, where we fail, and where we stand back up. That's what being alive means." Xerneas lowered its head, its antlers glowing blindingly bright. "You have a fire in you, Ash Ketchum. It is dangerous. It could burn the world down. Or it could light the way," Ash said. Xerneas stared at him for an eternity. Then, the stag huffed, a sound of amusement. Very well. I will not fight your war for you. I am life, not a weapon. But I will give you the means to break the chains. The illusion shattered. Ash was back in the grove. Xerneas reared up. A mist of rainbow light erupted from its antlers, geomancy. The mist didn't heal the land immediately. It condensed. It swirled around Ash, coalescing into a small, glowing crystal that floated into his hand. It was a rainbow wing, but made of pure crystal. The death that binds Yveltal is artificial, Xerneas spoke to the group. This light will shatter the machine. But be warned, when the destroyer is freed, it will be hungry. We'll handle the hunger, Ash said, gripping the crystal. Xerneas began to fade, returning to the mist. Do not die, little king. You are interesting. The life Pokemon vanished. Ash turned to his team. He held up the crystal. We have the key, Ash said. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the ground. The mist blew away. High above them, a shadow fell. It wasn't Valerian. It was a ship. A massive, flying fortress shaped like a sleek black pyramid. The Ascendancy's flagship. They tracked the energy spike. Clement yelled, checking his scanner. They found us. Good, Ash said. He recalled Charizard and unclipped a new ball, one he hadn't used since the League. He looked at Diantha, Korrina, and Serena. They want a war. Ash grinned, and it was a feral, terrifying thing. Let's give them an apocalypse. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8, Fracture. The sky above the Geomancy Grove didn't just darken, it broke. The Ascendancy flagship, a monolith of obsidian metal shaped like a jagged pyramid, descended through the cloud layer. It didn't fire lasers. It didn't launch fighters. It simply displaced the air with such massive, crushing weight that the ancient trees of the grove began to splinter before the hull even touched the canopy. Scatter! Ash roared, shoving Serena toward the tree line. The team broke formation. Dragonite banked hard to the left, narrowly avoiding the gravity well generated by the ship's engines. Charizard dove right, shielding Diantha and Korrina from the backwash of superheated thruster exhaust. A single object dropped from the apex of the pyramid. It wasn't a bomb. It was a capsule, roughly the size of a van, made of chrome and glowing with pulsating purple veins. It slammed into the earth exactly where Xerneas had stood moments before. The impact was silent. A vacuum bubble expanded, sucking in the dust, the leaves, and the sound. Then, the bubble popped. A shockwave of necrotic energy blasted outward, knocking Ash off his feet and sending Pikachu tumbling into the underbrush. Ash! Serena cried out, scrambling to her feet. Stay back! Ash ordered, coughing up grit. He looked at the crater. The capsule hissed. The metal panels peeled back like rotting fruit. Something crawled out. It didn't have a name. It barely had a shape. It was a biological abomination, a chimera. It stood on 4 legs that shifted and rippled, growing and shrinking in real time. Its torso was covered in the red armored plating of a Groudon, but the flesh beneath was translucent and gelatinous, like a Deoxys. Its head was a nightmare of multiple eyes and a jaw that unhinged to reveal rows of metallic teeth. What is that? Korrina whispered, her voice trembling. Her combat instincts, usually sharp, were screaming at her to run. This wasn't a Pokemon. It was a cancer. Subject Omega, Valerian's voice broadcasted from the ship above, echoing like the voice of God. The ultimate adaptability. It does not have a type. It has all of them. The chimera twitched. It looked at Ash. Then it vanished. There was no blur of speed. 1 second it was there, the next, Ash was flying through the air, blood spraying from a gash across his chest. Ash. He hit a rock face 50 feet away with a sickening crunch. The stone cracked. Ash slid down, limp, and debris from the cliffside, loosened by the ship's gravity drive, cascaded down, burying him in a tomb of granite and dust. No! Diantha screamed. She raised her hand. Gardevoir, Shadow Ball. Full power. Gardevoir unleashed a sphere of dark energy. The chimera didn't dodge. It simply grew a second mouth on its shoulder and ate the attack. The energy rippled through its body, turning its gelatinous skin a dark purple. It absorbed special attacks. Diantha realized, horrified. Korrina. Physicals only. I'm on it. Korrina launched herself forward, tears in her eyes but rage in her heart. Lucario. Close combat. Lucario rushed the beast, delivering a flurry of aura-infused punches. But the chimera's skin hardened instantly, mimicking the steel density of an agron. Lucario's fists bounced off with metallic clangs. The chimera swiped a massive claw. Lucario crossed its arms to block, but the force was tectonic. The aura Pokémon was launched into the trees, snapping trunks like matchsticks. Lucario. Korrina skidded to a halt, looking between her partner and the pile of rocks where Ash was buried. Don't look at him. Diantha commanded, her voice cracking like a whip. She stepped up, placing herself between the beast and Ash's tomb. If you look at him, you die. Eyes on the monster. The chimera shrieked, a sound that was a mix of a digital glitch and a dying wail. It turned its attention to the three women. It sensed the threat. Not Ash. Them. Beneath the stone darkness. Absolute, crushing darkness. Ash couldn't breathe. There was a heavy weight on his chest, a slab of granite pressing his ribs into his lungs. The air was thick with dust. He tried to move his arm. Pain flared, white-hot and blinding, shooting from his left shoulder down to his fingertips. Broken. Definitely broken. Get up, he told himself. He pushed. The rock didn't budge. Get up. They need you. He pushed again. His vision swam. The lack of oxygen was making his head spin. The silver circlet on his head felt heavy, like lead. You can't, a voice whispered in his head. It wasn't Valerian. It was his own doubt. You're just a kid from Pallet Town. You're not a king. You're a fraud. He heard the screams from above. Serena. Diantha. Korrina. They were fighting. And they were losing. Ash stopped pushing. He closed his eyes. The pain was overwhelming. Maybe it was better to just stop. If he stopped, the pain would go away. The responsibility would go away. Pika. A soft, warm weight nudged his cheek. Ash opened his eyes. In the pitch black, a tiny spark lit up. Pikachu. The electric mouse had squeezed through a gap in the rubble. He was battered, his fur matted with blood, but he was there. He licked Ash's nose. Pikachu. Ash wheezed. Pikachu didn't look sad. He looked angry. He sparked his cheeks, illuminating the small, coffin-like space. He pushed his small paws against the massive rock crushing Ash, trying to move it. It was impossible. He was too small. But he pushed anyway. Ash watched him. He watched his best friend trying to move a mountain for him. Tears pricked Ash's eyes. Not from pain. From shame. He's not giving up, Ash thought. Why are you? Ash grit his teeth. He forced air into his compressed lungs. He reached out with his good hand, grabbing the jagged edge of the stone. He didn't use strength. He used aura. He closed his eyes and felt for the fault lines in the rock. He felt for the vibrations of the battle above. He felt the frantic, terrified, ferocious heartbeats of the women he loved. I am not. Ash groaned, the blue light beginning to glow under the rubble. Done. The surface the battle was a massacre. The chimera was toying with them. It shifted forms constantly, growing wings to chase Charizard, sprouting tentacles to snare Gardevoir. Serena was the only reason they were still alive. Delphox, fire spin. Create a wall. Serena screamed. Her Delphox slammed its branch into the ground. A vortex of fire erupted, creating a barrier between the chimera and the injured Korrina. It's adapting too fast. Clement yelled from the periphery, where he was trying to hack the Ascendancy drone network. Every time you hit it, it rewrites its genetic code to resist the next attack. It's an evolutionary algorithm made flesh. So we hit it with something it can't predict. Diantha shouted. Her gown was torn, her hair wild. She looked less like a movie star and more like a Valkyrie. Gardevoir. Moonblast. Mix it with Psychic. Gardevoir fired. The chimera opened a mouth to absorb it. Now, Korrina. Diantha signaled. Korrina didn't hesitate. She used the flash of the Moonblast as cover. She vaulted off a burning tree, airborne. Lucario. Bone Rush. Aim for the eyes. Lucario spun the bone staff like a drill. He slammed it into the chimera's central eye cluster. The beast screeched, thrashing. It didn't absorb the bone, it took damage. Green blood sprayed. Yes. Korrina landed. But the victory was short-lived. The chimera's wound bubbled. The flesh knitted together in seconds. And then, the chimera's arm changed. It elongated, turning into a bone-like spike, mimicking Lucario's weapon. It swung. The spike caught Lucario in the midsection, pinning the Pokémon to a tree. Lucario. Korrina screamed, running forward. The chimera turned its gaze to Korrina. It raised a massive, clawed foot to crush her. No. Serena ran out from behind the firewall. She didn't have a plan. She just threw herself at Korrina, shoving her out of the way. The claw came down. It didn't hit Serena. A blast of water, pressurized to the point of being a solid laser, struck the chimera's leg, severing it cleanly. The beast toppled sideways, howling. Silence fell over the clearing. Everyone turned to the pile of rocks. The rubble was glowing. A brilliant, blinding blue light was seeping through the cracks. The stones began to float, lifted by a gravity field of pure aura. The rocks blasted outward. Ash stood there. He looked terrible. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. His face was a mask of blood and dust. His clothes were in tatters. But his eyes. His eyes were burning with a golden light that matched the crystal Xerneas had given him. Greninja stood beside him. But Greninja had changed. The water veil that usually surrounded the ninja Pokémon was gone. Instead, Greninja was clad in armor made of solid golden light. A massive, three-pronged shuriken made of pure energy spun slowly on his back. The Golden Bond. You hurt my family, Ash said. His voice didn't sound like his own. It sounded like a legion. The chimera regenerated its leg. It roared, sensing a challenger that finally matched its power level. It charged. Ash didn't move. He didn't issue a command. He and Greninja moved as one entity. Greninja vanished. He reappeared instantly in front of the charging beast. He caught the chimera's massive claw with one hand. The ground beneath them shattered, creating a crater 10 feet deep. But Greninja didn't budge. Cut, Ash whispered. Greninja's free hand glowed with that golden light. He slashed upward. It wasn't a water move. It was a blade of pure determination. It sliced through the chimera's Groudon armor like it was paper. The beast was thrown backward, a massive gash opening on its chest that refused to heal. The golden energy was cauterizing the wound, preventing regeneration. "It can't heal from that," Clement shouted, checking his scanner. "The energy signature, it's anti-entropic. It's overriding the beast's cellular repair. Finish it." Korrina yelled, clutching her injured Lucario. Ash walked forward. Each step cracked the ground. The pain in his arm was gone, replaced by the adrenaline of the bond. "Water shuriken," Ash said. Greninja reached behind his back. The massive golden shuriken expanded, humming with the sound of a jet engine. The Chimera panicked. For the first time, the abomination knew fear. It tried to scramble back, shape-shifting into a flying form to escape. "No you don't," Diantha said. Her eyes glowed pink. "Gardevoir, psychic. Hold it down. Delphox, fire spin. Trap it." Serena added. Gardevoir and Delphox combined their powers, creating a cage of psychic fire that pinned the beast to the ground. Ash raised his good hand. Greninja raised the shuriken. "Go." Greninja launched the weapon. The golden disc flew. It didn't just cut the air, it burned it. It struck the Chimera center mass. There was no explosion. Just a blinding flash of light that turned the night into day. The Chimera dissolved. Layer by layer, the genetic slurry was vaporized by the purity of the bond energy. The beast shrieked one last time before vanishing into nothingness. The light faded. Greninja stood panting, the golden armor flickering and fading back into his normal blue skin. He collapsed to one knee. Ash stood for a second longer. He looked at the empty crater. He looked at his friends. Then his eyes rolled back in his head. The blue glow vanished. He crumpled. Ash. Serena was there first. She caught him before he hit the ground, cradling his head in her lap. "He's burning up," she cried, touching his forehead. "His temperature is off the charts." Diantha and Korrina rushed over. Diantha checked his pulse. "It's thready." The biofeedback from that form, it nearly killed him. High above, the black pyramid ship began to ascend. "Let them go," Valerian's voice echoed from the retreating vessel. "We have what we came for." Clement looked up, confused. "What?" "They lost the monster." "They didn't want the monster to win," Diantha said grimly, looking at Ash's unconscious form. "They wanted to see if the God Killer could be hurt by the bond phenomenon. They wanted data." She looked at the crater where the golden energy had scarred the earth. "And we just gave them the blueprint on how to counter us." The camp, 1 hour later, the mood was somber. They had retreated into a cave system to hide from the aerial patrols. A fire crackled in the center. Ash was lying on a sleeping bag, his arms splinted and bandaged. He was asleep, his breathing ragged. Pikachu lay curled against his chest, refusing to move. Korrina sat by the entrance, sharpening a knife. She looked older. Her usual exuberance was gone, replaced by a cold, hard stare. "We can't keep doing this," Korrina said softly. "We win the battles, but we're losing the war. Ash nearly died today. Lucario is barely walking." Serena was wiping Ash's forehead with a damp cloth. She looked at Korrina. "We have the crystal," Serena said. "We have the key to free Veltal." "And then what?" Korrina snapped. "We let the death god loose and hope it eats Valerian before it eats us." "That's not a plan, Serena. That's a suicide pact." "It's the only play we have," Diantha said from the shadows. She was examining the crystal Xerneas had given them. It pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light. "Valerian is building something," Diantha continued. "The data he stole, he's going to use it to perfect his Titan. If we wait, he becomes invincible. We have to strike the source." "The Zygarde cells," Clement said, looking at his laptop. I've been tracking the seismic activity. Valerian is moving everything to Terminus Cave. That's where the final stage is. Ash groaned. The conversation stopped. Serena leaned in close. Ash? Ash opened his eyes. They were brown again. Tired, pain-filled, but clear. We go to Terminus, Ash whispered, his voice raspy. You can't move, Serena argued gently. Your arm. Ash grabbed her hand with his good one. He squeezed it. Valerian thinks he knows us, Ash rasped. He looked at Diantha, then Korrina, then Clement. He thinks he has the data. He thinks we're just variables in an equation. He struggled to sit up. Serena tried to push him back, but he resisted. He forgot one thing, Ash said, looking at the fire. Data is past tense. Evolution. He looked at Greninja, who was resting against the cave wall. Evolution happens in the moment. Ash looked at his team. They were battered, bleeding, and terrified. But they were still there. We're going to Terminus, Ash commanded. And we're going to show him that you can't calculate a soul. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9, The God Killer. The Kalos Pokemon League was no longer a stadium. It was a fortress. Perched atop a high plateau, the castle-like structure was usually a place of ceremony, where trainers battled for glory amidst cheering crowds. Now, the grandstands were lined with anti-air batteries rigged by Clement. The battlefield was dug with trenches. The sky was a churning, bruised violent, reflecting the unnatural storm brewing in the south. Ash stood on the parapet of the main gate. His left arm was in a sling, bound tight against his chest. The wind whipped his hair, stinging his eyes with grit. Behind him stood the army of Kalos. It wasn't a formal military. It was a patchwork coalition of survival. To his left, Viola checked the chitinous armor of her Vivillon, flanked by hundreds of bug-type trainers. Beside her, Grant stood like a statue, his tyrant drum roaring silently, leading a phalanx of rock-type specialists. Ramos, the old gardener, was sharpening a pair of massive shears, looking surprisingly lethal, with a legion of grass types dug into the earth like living mines. They're coming, Wulfric rumbled, his breath misting in the cooling air. The ice-type leader stood with his Abomasnow, watching the horizon. Let them come, Olympia floated a few inches off the ground, her Meowstic orbiting her. The stars predict only chaos. But chaos is a ladder. Ash turned to his inner circle. Diantha wore a flight suit now, her white gown abandoned for practicality. She looked at a datapad linked to the orbital satellites. Visual confirmation, Diantha said, her voice steady but tight. Target is 20 miles out. Moving at 60 miles per hour. It's crushing the forest as it walks. Size? Ash asked. Comparable to a Dynamax event, Clement reported, his fingers flying across his keyboard. But the energy density is wrong. It's darker. Ash nodded. He looked at Korrina. She was vibrating with tension. Her Lucario stood beside her, no longer looking for a mega stone, but simply flexing its claws. Korrina, Ash said. Yeah. You have the ground, Ash ordered. Take Grant and Wulfric. You're the anvil. If that thing reaches the walls, we lose. Hold the line at the ravine. It won't pass, Korrina promised, her eyes hard. Diantha, Ash turned to the champion. You have the air. Viola and the aerial core. Keep the drone swarm off Korrina's back. And if Valerian exposes a heat vent, you punish him. Consider the skies clear, Diantha said, clipping a pokeball to her belt. Serena, Ash said, softening his tone slightly. Serena was dressed in a medic's tunic, a headset around her neck. She looked terrified, but she didn't shrink away. I know, she said. Triage is set in the Victory Road tunnels. The evacuation ships are prepped. I'll keep the lines open. Ash stepped forward, closing the distance between them. He didn't care about the gym leaders watching. He placed his good hand on the back of her neck, pulling her forehead to his. Be the voice, he whispered. Don't let them lose hope. Don't let them kill you, she whispered back, her voice trembling. Ash pulled away. He looked at Pikachu, perched on his shoulder, and Greninja, standing silently in the shadows of the gate. Clement, you're with me, Ash said. We're the spear tip. When Korrina stops its momentum, and Diantha strips its shields, we go for the heart. The Xernea's crystal? Clement asked, patting the reinforced case on his back. The crystal, Ash confirmed. We shove it right down its throat. A siren wailed. On the horizon, a shape emerged from the smoke. It was a nightmare. Valerian had kept his word. The Titan was not a Pokémon. It was a god-killer. It stood 300 feet tall. Its lower body was a serpentine mass of black and green scales, the corrupted cells of Zygarde, acting as a tank tread that pulverized the earth. Its upper torso was humanoid, clad in obsidian armor, pulsing with red veins. But the wings were the horror. They were Yveltal's wings, but ripped open and stitched onto a mechanical frame. They spanned a mile, dripping a black, oily fog that withered everything it touched. In the center of the Titan's chest, embedded in the armor, was a cockpit. A throne. Lord Valerian sat there, magnified on the screens of the defending army. Citizens of the old world. Valerian's voice didn't come from speakers, it resonated in the chest cavity of every living thing, a psychic broadcast amplified by the Titan. Behold the singularity. I bring you order. The Titan raised a massive arm. The hand wasn't a hand, it was a cannon. Oblivion beam, Valerian commanded. A beam of dark red light, thick as a train, erupted from the cannon. Olympia. Barriers. Ash screamed. The psychic gym leader raised her hands. Light screen. Reflect. A dome of golden geometric energy materialized over the league. The beam hit. The sound was deafening. The barrier groaned, cracked, and shattered like glass. The beam punched through, carving a trench through the outer wall and vaporizing a watchtower. Ash didn't flinch. He drew his breath. All units. Ash roared, his voice amplified by the PA system. Engage. The ground war, forward. Korrina screamed, leading the charge. She didn't run away from the Titan. She ran toward it. Behind her, Grant's Tyrant Rum and Wulfric's Abomasnow bellowed, leading a stampede of heavyweights. Agron, Steelix, Mamoswine, tons of muscle and steel thundering down the slope toward the ravine crossing. The Titan unleashed a wave of smaller units from its underbelly, thousands of Z-Series clones. Z-Garchomps, Z-Sizers, all metallic and soulless. The two armies collided in the ravine with the force of a tectonic shift. Macamp, dynamic punch. Korrina vaulted off a rock, her Lucario mirroring her movement. They slammed into a Zeridon, shattering its faceplate. Don't stop hitting them. Korrina yelled, spinning into a kick that decapitated a mechanical Houndoom. Break their lines. To her left, Wulfric was a blizzard. Avalanche. His Abomasnow summoned a cascade of ice boulders, crushing a squad of enemy droids. But the Titan was approaching. It ignored the ants at its feet. It simply stepped on them. A massive, Zygarde-scale tail swept across the battlefield. Incoming. Grant shouted. Tyrant Rum, head smash. The T-Rex Pokémon slammed its head into the incoming tail, trying to stop the momentum. It was like a fly trying to stop a falling tree. Tyrant Rum was swatted aside, crashing through a canyon wall. Grant. Korrina screamed. Focus. Wulfric barked, pulling her back as a laser blast scorched the ground where she stood. We have to break its balance. Aim for the treads. The sky wore the air was a dogfight. Diantha rode her Dragonite, Charizard was with Ash, leading a squadron of Talonflame, Noivern, and Braviary. Scatter formation. Pattern Delta. Diantha commanded into her comms. The bird Pokémon broke apart, weaving through the swarm of Ascendancy hunter-killer drones. The sky was lit up with hyper beams and air slashes. Viola. Blind it. Diantha ordered. On it. Viola, riding a massive Yanmega, signaled her bug core. Vivillon, sleep powder. Butterfree, stun spore. Cloud the cockpit. Thousands of bug Pokémon flew over the Titan's head, shaking their wings. A massive cloud of glittering dust descended on Valerian's throne. Insulting, Valerian sneered from inside the cockpit. Ventilation purge. The Titan's shoulders opened. Jets of superheated steam blasted outward, incinerating the powder, and blowing the bug Pokémon backward. Pull up. Viola screamed, her Yanmega tumbling. Gardevoir, psychic. Diantha shouted. From the back of Dragonite, Gardevoir extended her mind, catching the falling bug types in a telekinetic net before they hit the ground. It's shielded against status effects, Diantha noted, grimacing. We need brute force. All units, focus fire on the right wing joint. If we clip its wing, it can't vent heat. 100 hyper beams converged on the Titan's shoulder. The Titan roared, a sound of twisting metal. The armor cracked. It's working. Diantha yelled. Pour it on. The spear tip Ash watched the chaos from the back of Charizard. He and Clement were hovering in the smoke, waiting. Shields are fluctuating on the right sector, Clement noted, staring at his scanner goggles. Diantha bought us an opening. 8 seconds. That's all we need, Ash said. He patted Charizard's neck. Ready, buddy. Charizard growled, low and dangerous. He was tired, he couldn't Mega Evolve, but he was furious. Greninja, Ash said to the frog Pokémon clinging to Charizard's belly. Get ready to jump. Go. Charizard folded his wings and dove. They dropped like a meteor, straight through the flak fire. Interceptor. Clement warned. A Z-Salamence rocketed toward them, its metal jaws gaping. Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Pikachu leaped from Ash's shoulder, mid-dive. He spun in the air, unleashing a massive bolt of electricity that fried the Salamence guidance chip. The drone spiraled away. Pikachu landed back on Ash's shoulder with a practiced thud. We're in range. Ash yelled. They were hurtling toward the Titan's chest, straight for Valerian. Land's wrath. Valerian commanded calmly. The Titan's chest armor shifted. Spikes of crystallized energy shot out, like a shotgun blast of stone spears. Barrel roll. Ash yanked Charizard's reins. Charizard spun, dodging the spears by inches. One clipped his wing, tearing the membrane. Charizard roared in pain but kept flying. Close enough. Ash shouted. Greninja, now. Greninja launched himself from Charizard's belly. In mid-air, the bond ignited. The golden water veil exploded into existence. Ash Greninja, armed with the crystallized Xernea's energy Clement had handed him, flew toward the cockpit. Take this. Ash roared, his own eyes glowing gold. Greninja slammed the crystal into the Titan's chest plate. Crack. The crystal shattered. A pulse of rainbow light erupted. It was the pure essence of life. It washed over the Titan. For a second, the battlefield froze. The Z-clone stuttered. The red veins on the Titan turned pink. It's working. Serena cried from the command center. The corruption is receding. Valerian looked at the dashboard. Energy purge detected. Foreign biological agent, life force. He didn't panic. He smiled beneath his mask. Countermeasure, invert polarity. He slammed a lever. The Titan's core screamed. It didn't reject the life energy. It ate it. The pink light turned black. What? Ash gasped, watching from Charizard. He absorbed it, Clement stammered, horrified. He designed the core to metabolize Xernea's energy. He used us to refuel. Thank you for the delivery, Valerian's voice boomed. Power levels at 200%. The Titan stood up straighter. The damage to its wing healed instantly in a flash of black light. Now, Valerian said. Let us end the pretense. The Titan raised both arms. The ground shook. Planetary devastation. The Titan slammed its fists into the earth. A shockwave of black energy rippled outward. It didn't just knock people down. It disintegrated the ground. The trenches collapsed. The ravine swallowed Korrina's army. Korrina. Ash screamed. The shockwave hit the air. Diantha's Dragonite was swatted out of the sky like a fly. Then, the wave hit Charizard. It wasn't an impact. It was a shutdown. Charizard's flame died. His eyes rolled back. He fell out of the sky. Hold on. Ash grabbed Clement and Pikachu, pulling them close. They crashed onto the broken plateau of the League entrance. Ash took the brunt of the fall, shielding Clement. He felt something in his back snap. He lay there, staring up at the smoke-filled sky. Silence. The army was gone. Buried or scattered. The Titan loomed over the plateau. It stepped onto the League grounds, crushing the statue of the first champion. Valerian's cockpit hissed open. He didn't step out. He simply looked down at the broken boy lying in the rubble. You fought well, Valerian said, his voice terrifyingly conversational. For a glitch. Ash rolled over. He coughed, blood spattering the stones. He used his good arm to push himself up. His legs were shaking. His vision was blurry. I'm not done, Ash wheezed. Pikachu crawled out of the rubble. He couldn't stand. He dragged himself to stand in front of Ash, cheeks sparking weakly. Greninja pulled himself from a crater nearby. The golden form was gone. He was bruised, bleeding purple blood. Look around you, Valerian gestured to the ruin. Your friends are fallen. Your crystal failed. Your dragon is broken. The Titan's chest began to glow purple. It was charging a final beam. Ash. Serena's voice came over the comms, filled with static and sobbing. Ash, get out of there. He's charging the Oblivion Wing. It will turn you to stone. I can't run, Ash whispered. He stood up fully. He swayed, but he stood. Why? Valerian asked, genuinely curious. Why stand? The math says you lose. Survival instinct dictates you flee. Why defy the logic? Ash looked up. He adjusted the crooked, tarnished silver circlet on his head. Because, Ash said, his voice gaining strength. I bet on the one thing you can't calculate. And what is that? A miracle. Valerian scoffed. Miracles are statistical anomalies. I have cancelled them. He pressed a button. A hum filled the air. A high-pitched frequency. Ash reached for his belt. He grabbed his remaining pokeballs, Sceptile, Infernape, Crocodile. He threw them. They didn't open. The balls bounced off the ground, dead. The red lights were dark. What? Ash stared at them. The nullification field, Valerian explained. It jams the subspace frequency of Pokeball technology. You cannot recall your friends. You cannot summon help. You are alone. Ash looked at Pikachu. He looked at Greninja. They were the only ones out of their balls. No, Ash said. I'm not alone. He stepped in front of his Pokémon. Pikachu, Greninja, get behind me. Pika. Pikachu refused, ears flat. That's an order. Ash roared, tears streaming down his face. I won't let him take you. Valerian aimed the Titan's cannon directly at Ash. Goodbye, King of Kalos. The cannon fired. A beam of pure, agonizing darkness shot toward Ash. Ash didn't close his eyes. He raised his hand. Not to block. To catch. The blue aura flared. It was wild, desperate, suicidal. If I burn, Ash thought, I'll burn so bright you choke on the ash. The beam hit. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10, The King's Decree. The beam of the Oblivion Wing did not make a sound. It was the absence of sound, a vacuum of entropy that sought to unravel the atomic bonds of anything it touched. It struck Ash Ketchum. Or rather, it struck the space 6 inches in front of his palm. Time seemed to warp. The air around the ruined plateau shimmered like a heat mirage. Ash stood with his boots grinding into the cracked stone, his left arm useless, his right hand extended. The silver circlet on his brow was no longer tarnished metal, it was blinding white-hot, vibrating with a frequency that shattered the glass in the windows of the ruined League castle behind him. He wasn't blocking the beam. He was filtering it. The darkness hit his aura and split. Like water hitting a stone in a river, the death energy was forced around him, carving deep trenches into the earth on either side, vaporizing the rubble, but leaving Ash, and the Pokémon cowering behind him, untouched in a cone of safety. Impossible, Valerian's voice crackled, devoid of its usual arrogant smoothness. The chaotic variable of biological aura cannot withstand a Class 5 entropic event. The math says you are dust. Ash didn't answer. He couldn't. His world was white fire. He could feel every cell in his body screaming. The crown of Kalos wasn't just a symbol, it was a circuit. It was pulling the latent infinity energy from the land itself, from the roots deep beneath the crust, from the ley lines, from the very air, and funneling it through Ash's nervous system to hold back the tide. He was the dam. And the water was rising. I can't hold it, Ash thought, the edges of his vision turning black. His knees buckled. Behind him, Pikachu screamed, a raw, terrified sound. The electric mouse grabbed Ash's pant leg, trying to pull him back, trying to share the load, but the energy field was too dense. The beam intensified. Valerian was diverting auxiliary power to the cannon. Fade, the Titan commanded. Ash's arm trembled. The blue light of his aura began to flicker. The darkness crept closer, licking at his fingertips. Then, a shadow fell over him. It wasn't darkness. It was a silhouette. A hand, encased in a shattered combat gauntlet, reached out and grabbed Ash's wrist. Brace, a voice gritted out. Ash forced his eyes open. Korrina. She was covered in dust, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead, her combat gear shredded. But she was standing there, shoulder to shoulder with him. She wasn't using a Pokémon. She was using herself. She channeled her own aura, raw, unrefined, and fierce, into Ash's arm. You don't get to die, Ash, she snarled at the beam, her teeth bared. Not until I say so. A second hand placed itself on Ash's shoulder. Cool. Steady. Diantha. She had crawled from the wreckage of her Dragonite. She stood tall, despite the limp. Her eyes were glowing with a terrifying violet light. She wasn't just lending support, she was telekinetically reinforcing Ash's skeletal structure, holding his bones together against the crushing pressure. The king does not fall, Diantha whispered, her voice projecting directly into his mind. We are the pillars. Ash. The third voice came from the comms, but then, the air behind them shivered. Delphox materialized from a distortion in the space, a teleport. Holding on to the fox Pokemon was Serena. She didn't have aura. She didn't have psychic power. She had a banner, the torn flag of the Kalos League she had ripped from the flagpole in the bunker. She jammed the staff into the ground behind Ash, anchoring him. She wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, burying her face in his torn jacket. "We're here," Serena sobbed, but her grip was iron. "We're all here. Let it flow, Ash. Don't hold it in. Push it back." Ash felt them. He felt Korrina's fire. He felt Diantha's steel. He felt Serena's heart. The circuit was complete. He wasn't a dam anymore. He was a lens. Ash roared. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was a declaration. The blue aura turned gold. It expanded, explosive and violent. It didn't just stop the beam, it reversed the polarity. The Oblivion energy was shoved back up the stream, colliding with the Titan's cannon. Boom! The Titan's arm exploded. The God-Killer recoiled, staggering back. The massive limb, stripped of its armor, smoked and sparked. Valerian howled in frustration as his cockpit alarms screamed. Ash fell to his knees, gasping for air. The connection broke. The golden light faded, leaving him trembling. Status. Valerian shrieked, frantically typing on his console. Analyze the anomaly. That output exceeded the theoretical limit of biological life. It wasn't biology, Ash wheezed, forcing himself to stand up again, supported by Korrina and Serena. It was a bond. He looked at the Titan. It was damaged, but still standing. The Zygarde cells were already beginning to knit the metal back together. "He's regenerating," Diantha noted, wiping blood from her lip. "We can't win a war of attrition. We need to destroy the core." "The core is shielded," Clement's voice came over the radio. "He was alive, buried in the rubble of the gatehouse. And he still has the nullification field up. We can't call out any heavy hitters. No Charizard. No Dragonite." Ash looked at his team. Pikachu, exhausted. Greninja, battered. Lucario, unable to Mega Evolve. Delphox, Serena's protector. Gardevoir, drained. 5 Pokemon. 4 humans. Against a god. "We don't need heavy hitters," Ash said. He looked at the Titan, his tactical mind dissecting the enemy like a puzzle. "We need a surgical strike." He turned to the girls. "Diantha, you said he calculates everything, right?" "He's a predictive engine," Diantha nodded. "He counters moves before we make them." "Then we stop making moves," Ash said. "We make chaos." He pointed to the Titan's legs, the massive tank treads of Zygarde cells. "Korrina, if you destabilize the ground while he's regenerating, his gyroscope has to recalibrate. That buys us 2 seconds." "I can do that," Korrina grinned, cracking her knuckles. "Lucario and I will tear the floor up." "Serena," Ash looked at her. "The nullification field. It's a frequency jammer. Can Delphox use a fire spin to superheat the air around the antenna? Ionize the atmosphere?" Serena blinked, then understood. "If the air is ionized, the signal scatters. It creates static." "Exactly," Ash said. "Create a hole in the jamming. Just for a second." "And you?" Diantha asked. Ash looked at Greninja. The frog Pokemon nodded. He didn't need words. "We're going inside," Ash said. The Titan roared, its repair cycle complete. It raised its remaining arm. "The time for variables is over," Valerian announced. Total erasure. The chest cavity opened. The purple light of the main cannon began to gather. This wasn't a beam, it was a bomb. Now. Ash screamed. Korrina moved first. Lucario. Shatter the earth. She and Lucario didn't attack the Titan. They attacked the cliff edge the Titan was standing on. They hammered the ground with a synchronized force palm. The rock, already weakened by the battle, gave way. The Titan pitched forward, its aim thrown off by 10 degrees. The blast fired wide, carving a hole in the sky. Recalibrating. Valerian growled. Stabilizers engage. Not yet. Serena shouted. Delphox. Burn the sky. Delphox twirled its wand. A massive vortex of fire erupted, not at the Titan, but around it. The heat was intense. The air shimmered. Inside the cockpit, Valerian's screens flickered. Warning, signal interference. Field integrity dropping. Diantha. Ash yelled. Diantha closed her eyes. She reached out with her mind, linking with Gardevoir. She grabbed Ash and Greninja in a telekinetic grip. Fly, my king. She launched them. Ash and Greninja became a blur. They shot through the fire, through the static, straight toward the Titan's exposed chest cavity where the cannon was cooling. Valerian saw them coming. Point defense, he shouted. Dozens of laser turrets popped out of the Titan's armor. They locked onto Ash. Ash didn't dodge. He didn't have time. Pikachu. Ash yelled. Pikachu, clinging to Ash's back, leaped. Volt tackle. The electric mouse turned into a ball of golden lightning. He didn't aim for one turret, he ricocheted. He bounced from gun to gun, a pinball of destruction, shattering the lenses before they could fire. Ash and Greninja hit the chest plate. They didn't land gracefully. They crashed onto the metal ledge just below the cockpit. Ash scrambled up. He was 10 feet away from Valerian, separated only by the reinforced glass of the throne. Valerian looked at him. The man's eyes went wide behind his mask. You. Valerian hissed. You are a plague. Why won't you stay down? Ash walked forward. His arm was throbbing, but he didn't feel it. He felt the crown. He felt the anger of the Zygarde cells trapped in this machine. Because you stole this, Ash said, placing his hand on the glass. You stole the land. You stole the life. You think power is something you take. Ash's eyes glowed blue. Greninja. Greninja stepped up beside him. He placed his webbed hand on the glass, right over Ash's. Power, Ash whispered, is something you give. Bond synchronization, 100%. Ash didn't order an attack. He didn't shout a move name. He poured his soul into the machine. He pushed his aura through the glass, into the cockpit, and into the Titan's nervous system. He wasn't trying to destroy it. He was trying to talk to it. He reached out to the Zygarde cells. Wake up, Ash commanded. You are the order. You are the balance. Why do you serve the one who breaks you? The Titan shuddered. Inside the machine, the biological components, the Zygarde mass, the Yveltal wings, began to writhe. They heard the king. They heard the voice of the one chosen by Xerneas. System error. Valerian screamed, clutching his controls. Neuralink rejecting. The cells, they're rebelling. The Titan's arm reached up. Not to attack Ash, but to grab its own head. Get out, Ash said to Valerian. The glass began to crack. Not from force, but from resonance. No. Valerian slammed his fist on the dashboard. I am the ascendancy. I am the future. You're the past, Ash said. Greninja formed a water shuriken. But this one was small. Dense. Pure white. Break it, Ash ordered. Greninja slammed the shuriken into the cracked glass. The cockpit shattered. The vacuum pressure sucked the air out. Valerian was thrown back against his seat. Ash stepped through the broken glass into the cockpit. He stood over Valerian. The villain looked up. His mask was cracked. He looked pathetic. A man in a suit, playing God. Do it, Valerian spat. Kill me. Prove that you are just another violent savage. Ash looked at the man. He raised his hand. Valerian flinched. Ash reached past him and ripped the interface cable out of the console. The Titan died. The lights went out. The hum stopped. The massive body of the Godkiller went limp, freezing in place like a statue. Ash looked down at Valerian. I don't need to kill you, Ash said quietly. I just need you to stop. Ash turned around. He walked to the edge of the open cockpit. Below him, the smoke cleared. The sun was beginning to crest over the mountains, casting a long, golden beam across the ruined battlefield. Korrina, Diantha, and Serena were looking up. They were cheering. Ash raised his fist. It was over. The aftermath, the silence of the following days was strange. It wasn't the silence of death, it was the silence of rest. The cleanup was slow. The Ascendancy forces surrendered the moment the Titan fell. Without the jamming signal, the Pokémon of Kalos regained their full power, and the remaining drones were quickly dismantled. Ash spent 3 days in the infirmary. He slept for most of it. When he was awake, he was usually eating. On the 4th day, he walked out. He found them on the balcony of the restored royal palace in Lumio City. The city was still scarred, scaffolding covering the prism tower, but the lights were on. The people were in the streets. Diantha, Korrina, and Serena were waiting for him. They looked different. Diantha wore a simple white suit, elegant but functional. She looked like a prime minister. Korrina wore a ceremonial uniform of the Tower of Mastery, her arm in a sling that matched Ash's. She looked like a high commander. Serena wore a dress of deep blue, holding a datapad. She looked like the voice of the nation. Ash stepped onto the balcony. He was wearing formal clothes, a high-collared black tunic with silver embroidery. The circlet of Kalos was gone, returned to the vault, but he didn't need it. The authority was in his stride. You're late, Diantha smiled, though her eyes were soft. I had to dodge the nurses, Ash grinned, leaning against the railing. They wanted to keep me for another week. You died twice, Korrina pointed out. They have a point. Only partially, Ash shrugged. He looked out at the city. So? What's the verdict? Serena stepped forward. The Council of Mayors met this morning. They want to dissolve the old League Charter. They want a monarchy, Ash. They want you. Ash sighed. He looked at the sky. I'm not a king, Serena. I'm a trainer. I can't sit in a throne room signing tax laws. We know, Diantha said, stepping up beside him. That's why we drafted a counterproposal. She handed him a document. The Guardian Protocol, Diantha explained. You remain the champion. The protector. You lead the defense forces. You handle the threats that no one else can handle. You are the symbol. And the governing? Ash asked. I will handle the administration, Diantha said. As premier. I will rebuild the military, Korrina added. We're turning the Tower of Mastery into a global defense academy. No more reliance on technology we don't understand. And I, Serena smiled, will handle the people. The culture. The restoration of trust between humans and Pokémon. Ash looked at them. The 3 women who had held him up when the world tried to crush him. So, Ash said, a slow smile spreading across his face. I get to go on adventures, and you guys run the world. Essentially, Korrina laughed. But, Serena moved closer, her hand brushing his. You have to come back. Every time. Ash looked at Serena. Then at Korrina. Then at Diantha. He realized he wasn't looking at his staff. He was looking at his home. He reached out. He took Serena's hand. He took Korrina's hand. Diantha rested her hand on his shoulder. It wasn't a political alliance. It was a knot. "I'm not going anywhere," Ash promised. "We have a lot of work to do." "Yes, we do," Diantha agreed. She looked toward the door leading back inside. "Starting with the press conference in 5 minutes. They want to see the king and his queens." Ash groaned. "Can I fight another Titan instead?" "No," all 3 women said in unison. They laughed. It was a real, genuine sound that carried over the balcony and into the streets below. Below, in the plaza, the people looked up. They saw the 4 figures standing together in the sunlight. They saw the boy who saved them, and the women who stood with him. A cheer started. It wasn't frantic or terrified. It was joyous. "Long live the champion," someone shouted. "Long live the king," another answered. Ash tightened his grip on their hands. He looked at the horizon, where the sun was shining on a healed land. He felt the bond with Greninja, somewhere close by. He felt the heartbeat of the region. He was Ash Ketchum. He was a Pokémon master. And for the first time in his life, he didn't need to travel to find his next adventure. He was living it. "Ready?" Ash asked. Diantha, Korrina, and Serena squeezed his hands. "Ready." They turned to face their kingdom. Chapter 10 End.